There, she fell in love with Marcus O'Neill, the hotel's head chef, and they got married in 2009, with Anna adopting his last name. After got married with Marcus, Anna's life takes a turn when she meets Brian Walshe. Brian Walshe, born in July 1975 in Boston, Massachusetts, comes from a prominent and wealthy family. In his younger days, he would often borrow money from friends without paying them back. While in college, he would treat friends to meals at expensive restaurants, but would use various tricks to make sure they ended up paying for him. For years, Brian was estranged from his father, Dr. Thomas Walshe, and this distance continued until Thomas passed away in 2018. Their troubled relationship began when Brian deceitfully withdrew nearly $1 million from his father's personal account and vanished with the money. The father did not report his son to the police and even tried to convince him to return the stolen money. When Brian refused, Thomas cut off all communication with him. At the time of this serious theft, Brian's parents had been divorced for a long time, and his father had started a new family. Thomas decided to completely remove his eldest son from his life and his will. However, after Thomas passed away, Brian quickly asserted his claim and filed a lawsuit, alleging that the will was forged by Thomas' widow and younger children to deny him his rightful inheritance. Unfortunately, he could not provide any evidence to support his claims and did not receive any part of the estate. Many people who knew Brian described him as greedy, malicious, and very cruel. He often resorted to violence and struggled to control his emotions. He would get what he wanted using force, and when he was angry, he became a threat to others. Reports indicate that in the late 2000s, Brian received treatment at a psychiatric clinic to manage his anger, during which he was officially diagnosed with sociopathy. In 2014, a unique love story began when Anna met Brian, a hotel guest. At the time, Anna was married to Marcus O'Neill, who also worked at the hotel. Despite Anna's marriage, Brian was immediately attracted to her and began to pursue her with increasing intensity. Used to getting what he wanted and unwilling to accept rejection, he relentlessly sought Anna's attention. He eventually obtained her phone number and home address, where she lived with her husband, creating a troubling situation for all involved. In 2015, the O'Neill family had to involve the police due to Brian's relentless harassment, which occurred around the clock. He repeatedly pursued Anna, calling her at work, texting her personal phone, and insisting that she divorce her husband to be with him. The situation intensified when Brian threatened to harm Anna and her husband if she did not leave with him. The details that followed are unclear, particularly why Anna ultimately changed her mind. However, a year after, she surprisingly divorced her husband. A few months later, Brian became her second husband. The newlyweds moved into a luxurious home in Casson, Massachusetts, which is about 20 miles southeast of Boston, in a well-off neighborhood. They had 3 sons in quick succession, with the boys being born a couple of years apart. Anna chose not to take maternity leave and successfully balanced her job with being a mother, continuing to advance in her career. She became the regional general manager at Tishman Speyer, a real estate company, where she earned a high salary and became the primary breadwinner for the family. Since her job often required travel to Washington, D.C., she bought another home there in her name, where she stayed during business trips. During these trips, she relied on visiting nannies to help care for her children. What was Brian doing while his wife was busy expanding their family and advancing her career? Brian was unemployed. The $1 million he had once received from his father was running out, and everything his wife earned was carefully registered in her name. Brian was looking for easy ways to make money. Before marrying Anna, he had spent some time in South Korea, where he became friends with a wealthy people whose family owned an impressive art collection. After returning to the United States, Brian kept in touch with this friend, who unexpectedly asked for his help in selling several paintings by the famous artist Andy Warhol. Brian eagerly agreed but chose not only to sell the artworks for a commission, he wanted to profit from the transaction. He had a collection of abstract paintings by a renowned artist, titled Shadow. Brian assessed each painting and gathered the required documentation, including authenticity certificates. He then decided to create copies of both the paintings and the documentation. To do this, he contacted artists who could produce precise replicas of the paintings. Brian convinced the artists that he needed these copies as backups, since each original painting was valued at approximately $250,000. For several years, Brian successfully created and sold fake paintings as if they were originals to collectors from different countries. His scheme came to an end when one of his buyers, an art expert who specializes in Andy Warhol, quickly recognized forgery and took legal action against him. The FBI then launched an investigation, and in April 2021, he pleaded guilty to selling counterfeit art. As part of a deal negotiated by his lawyer, he was placed under house arrest instead of serving time in prison, on the condition that he return the money earned from the sale of the fake paintings to the buyers. Although Brian's movements were heavily restricted, he could leave his house twice a day to drop off and pick up his children from school. He also had 2.5 hours each morning to visit a limited number of approved places nearby, such as stores, pharmacies, and dry cleaners, to buy essential items. On December 31, 2022, the Walshe family was getting ready to celebrate New Year's Eve at home. Only Anna, Brian, and their 3 young sons were present. Because of their age, the boys went to bed early, leaving Anna and Brian at the dinner table. That day, Anna shared her last social media post, where she sent New Year's greetings and mentioned that the past year had been tough, but she and Brian were still together. Anna was supposed to fly to Washington, D.C. for work on January 3rd. However, when she didn't show up for work on January 4th and missed an important deal, her boss, Tishman Speyer, reported her missing to the police. Her phone had also been unreachable for several days. Brian also reported her missing, expressing concern that he had not been able to contact her for several days. According to Brian, he last saw Anna on January 1st. He claimed that she had woken him up early in the morning, saying there were some issues at work and that her boss had asked her to come in earlier than planned. He then believed that his wife had gone to the airport with only a few belongings. However, inconsistencies in the case soon emerged. First, Anna had not purchased, changed, or booked a flight on January 1st, nor had she canceled a flight scheduled for January 3rd. Second, she had not called a taxi. Brian suggested that she may have hitchhiked, but this theory was not convincing. Brian's statements and behavior raised many questions. His accounts were inconsistent, and he did not seem particularly interested in what was going on. Unable to contact Anna for more than 3 days, he only reported her missing on the 4th day, and only after her workplace called. Brian was considered the prime suspect from the start. However, law enforcement did not have sufficient grounds to arrest him or obtain a search warrant for his family home. They conducted only a cursory search with his permission, but nothing came of it. Brian maintained that he had lived a normal life during those 3 days, visiting shops regularly and doing housework. However, verifying his claims proved difficult. Each time he left the house, he forgot his phone, which he said was often taken away by his older children to play games without permission. On January 5th, police issued a public appeal on television, showing a photo of Anna and asking anyone with information about her whereabouts or fate to contact law enforcement immediately. However, no witnesses came forward. Anna was known to have called her mother and sister one last time on December 31st, making her husband the last person known to have seen her. Surveillance footage from the neighborhood provided no clues. Anna was not captured on any cameras on the morning of January 1st, as if she had never left the house. Her husband, on the other hand, was recorded leaving and returning multiple times, but his destination could not be determined. His claims of a trip to the grocery store were dismissed, His car was not seen in any footage of the route, nor was it spotted in the store. It wasn't until January 8 that Brian was arrested for perjury and taken to the police station for questioning while his home was finally searched. It was discovered that on January 1st, he had visited a hardware store in another area, not on the list of approved places he could visit while under house arrest. There, he spent nearly $500 on a large amount of cleaning supplies, plastic sheeting, duct tape, a mop with a bucket, and utility rags. He paid in cash, perhaps hoping his visit would go unnoticed. The initial search of the family home turned up nothing unusual or suspicious. Everything was in its place, and there were no signs of a struggle or traces of blood. However, when law enforcement descended into the basement, there was no doubt. It was the scene of a gruesome crime. Blood was everywhere, and hidden among the old furniture was a bloody knife and saw wrapped in towels. Brian had previously admitted that on January 3rd, he had visited his mother's house on the other side of town. He claimed that he had violated the terms of his house arrest because his mother needed help with housework due to her poor health. But after the grisly discoveries in the basement, police suspected that along the way, the man may have disposed of evidence or some of his deceased wife's body parts. All the trash cans in the area where he and his wife lived, as well as along the route to his mother's house, were checked. These searches were fruitful, and in one of them, a kitchen axe with traces of dried blood and several bloody towels similar to those found in basement were discovered. Forensic analysis confirmed that the blood on the towels, knives, axes, and saws in the basement was that of the missing Anna, clearing any remaining doubts about her death. The search history on a laptop and a tablet seized from his home shows disturbing intentions. In the weeks leading up to his wife's disappearance, Brian searched the internet for information about the best states for divorce based on property division. He also looked into whether he could claim ownership of a second home in Washington, D.C. that belonged solely to Anna. This raises suspicions about his motives. At around 4 a.m. on January 1st, the first search made on the tablet was, "How long does it take for a body to start decomposing?" This search was followed by nearly 20 additional queries related to body disposal, such as how to clean up blood, how to dismember a body, whether a body could be identified without teeth, how long DNA can last, and if someone could be charged with a crime if the body was never discovered. All of these searches were conducted on the tablet belonging to his young child, who is the offspring of the woman he brutally harmed. By January 3rd, Brian was already looking up how and when someone can inherit property from a missing person. He seemed confident he could avoid punishment and was preparing to claim the inheritance. On January 18th, he was formally charged with his wife's murder, even though her body had not been found. Prosecutors believed that on the night of January 1st, Brian either deliberately or accidentally killed his wife. They suspect he then dismembered her body in their basement and placed the parts in plastic bags, disposing of them in trash bins around the city over the next few days. The area surrounding the Brian residence and within a few kilometers was carefully searched for evidence. Nearby wastelands, forests, and bodies of water were also investigated, but no findings were made. The defendant pleaded not guilty and did not reveal what he did with the body. Furthermore, it was disclosed that Anna had been feeling unhappy recently and had contemplated divorcing her husband. She expressed this concern multiple times during phone calls with her mother and sister. The day before her disappearance, she called her mother, asking her to fly from Serbia for a few days. However, her mother did not take her daughter seriously and decided to postpone the visit. Brian Walshe's trial is currently ongoing, and he is being held at the Norfolk Correctional Facility, waiting for his next court date. Anna's mother has been monitoring the investigation from Serbia, as she has not traveled to the United States. The Serbian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has reached out to the consulate in New York, which is coordinating with the Norfolk District Attorney's Office to ensure that Anna's mother receives timely updates about the investigation in court hearings. The 3 sons of the Walshe family are currently in state custody. Brian's family members do not want to care for them, mainly due to Anna's mother's age and health issues. Additionally, Anna's sister, who lives in Canada, has also refused to take in her nephews. The only person willing to take the boys is Anna's close friend, Pamela Bond, who prefers to care for them herself rather than see them separated and placed in different foster homes. As the investigation progresses and Brian Walshe's trial continues, it highlights the need to be aware of our relationships and the serious harm that can result from betrayal and deceit. While we do not yet know the final outcome for Brian Walshe, including whether he will face punishment or if Anna's body will ever be discovered, we will always remember Anna as a kind and loving person. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Laci Peterson. Laci Peterson was born on May 4, 1975, to Sharon and Dennis. However, her parents' marriage was short-lived, and they divorced when Laci and her older brother Brent were still young. Following the divorce, Laci's life changed with the introduction of her stepfather, Ron. As a dairy farmer, Ron became a significant influence in Laci's life, serving as a father figure and helping to raise her. Laci was a bright and cheerful person, known for her captivating smile and lively personality. She was a social butterfly, always eager to engage in conversations and thrive in social situations. Laci growing up on a dairy farm, Laci has a strong connection to nature. She spends a lot of time exploring and enjoying the natural beauty around her. One of her favorite activities was gardening with her mother. This shared hobby would eventually shape Laci's interests and career path as an adult. Laci was a student at Thomas Downey High School, where she was a cheerleader and made a lasting impression with her outgoing personality. After graduating, she attended California Polytechnic University, where she studied ornamental horticulture. During her time at Cal Poly, Laci would often visit a friend who worked at a restaurant in Morro Bay. It was there that she met Scott Peterson, a co-worker of her friends. Laci was immediately attracted to Scott and decided to take the initiative by giving him her phone number. Scott quickly responded, and they had an instant connection during their first conversation. They were eager to meet in person, and Scott asked Laci out on a date. Their first date was a deep-sea fishing trip, but it didn't go as smoothly as they had hoped. Laci became seasick during the outing, which put a damper on their initial encounter. Laci and Scott's relationship continued to blossom despite a rocky start. As they grew closer, they decided to take a significant step and move in together. Before meeting Laci, Scott had aspirations of becoming a professional golfer. But as their relationship deepened, his priorities shifted, and he chose to focus on a career in business instead. After Laci graduated from Cal Poly in 1997, Scott graduated the following year. Their graduation marked the beginning of an exciting new chapter in their lives. They married on August 9, 1997, in a beautiful ceremony at a resort in San Luis Obispo County's Ayala Valley. Surrounded by friends and family, they exchanged vows and celebrated their love. Following their wedding, Laci and Scott embarked on a new venture together, opening a sports bar called The Shack in San Luis Obispo, California. Although business was initially slow, they persevered, and over time, they began to attract a steady stream of customers. Weekends at The Shack were always packed. After many years of success, Laci and Scott made the difficult decision to sell the bar in 2000. Although the bar was a good source of income, they felt it was time to move on and explore new opportunities. After weighing their options, they sold The Shack and moved to Laci's hometown of Modesto, California. In October 2000, Laci and Scott bought a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in a desirable neighborhood. After the move, Laci took a part-time job as a substitute teacher, while Scott worked for a European fertilizer company called Branch. Laci and Scott's life was thriving, with Laci excelling in domestic duties, making their home warm and inviting. In 2002, they received the wonderful news that they were going to have a baby, with the due date set for February 10, 2003. They was overjoyed to discover they were having a boy and had already chosen the name Connor. Their happiness was short-lived, however. On December 24, 2002, Scott departed for a fishing trip at the Berkeley Marina, leaving Laci behind at 9:30 a.m. Scott noticed Laci was missing after he finished showering. He had previously been fishing and had showered and washed his clothes as soon as he got home. When he couldn't find Laci, he became worried and contacted her mother and stepfather, Sharon and Ron. However, neither of them had heard from her all day. As the hours passed and Laci remained missing, Scott and Sharon decided to file a missing persons report with the police around 6 p.m. They stressed to the police the urgency of the situation, explaining that Laci was 7 months pregnant with their unborn son, Connor. The police began questioning Scott about his activities on the day of Laci's disappearance. According to Scott, he had gone fishing at the Berkeley Marina, which is about 90 miles from their home in Modesto. However, the police had suspicions of foul play in Laci's disappearance from the very beginning of their investigation. During the initial search for Laci, the police were not suspicious of her disappearance. Laci's family publicly defended her husband Scott, as they had seemed perfect. However, as the investigation continued, police interest in Scott grew. Nearly a month after Laci's disappearance, a shocking discovery was made about Scott. Investigators discovered that while married to Laci, Scott had been cheating on Laci, having a long-term affair with a woman named Amber Fry. Amber Fry first contacted police on December 30, 2002. She told them that she had been having an affair with Scott Peterson, Laci's missing husband. Amber claimed that she had met Scott on November 20, 2002, and initially believed that he was single. However, Scott had told Amber just 2 weeks before Laci's disappearance that he was a widower, suggesting he would be spending his first holiday season without his wife. This revelation raised suspicions among the police, who wondered if Scott had already planned to murder his pregnant wife. To gather evidence, the police asked Amber to call Scott while being recorded, hoping to capture a potential confession. The police also informed Laci's family about Scott's infidelity. After learning about Scott's infidelity, Laci's family publicly withdrew their support for him. Meanwhile, a massive search effort was underway to find Laci. The search was a collaborative effort between law enforcement, Laci's loved ones, and hundreds of volunteers. Over 900 people participated in the search during the first 2 days alone. A police officer working on the case expressed skepticism that Laci had left her home voluntarily on December 24, 2002. Laci's disappearance shocked the media, capturing public attention with the story of a pregnant wife who went missing on Christmas Eve. Initially, a $5,000 reward was offered for information leading to her safe return, but as time passed with no leads, the reward was increased to $500,000 to raise awareness and gather information. Posters of Laci were displayed prominently in Modesto, California, and a friend's husband created a website to help spread the word about her disappearance. On April 13, 2003, a couple walking their dog at Richmond's Point Isabel Regional Shoreline Park made a disturbing discovery in a marshy area of the San Francisco Bay. They found the decomposing body of a male infant. The next day, another person discovered the body of a pregnant woman on the shore of the east side of the bay, about a mile away from where the baby was found. DNA tests confirmed on April 18, 2003, that the bodies were those of Laci Peterson and her unborn son, Connor. They were buried at Wood Cemetery. The autopsy revealed that the baby had 1.5 loops of nylon tape around his neck and a significant cut on his body. Laci's autopsy showed that Laci had 2 cracked ribs, her upper torso had been disemboweled, and her head and limbs were missing. The medical examiner determined that the baby died in the womb and was expelled from Laci's body after her death. Agents from the FBI and the Modesto Police Department searched the home of Scott and Laci Peterson, looking for evidence that might link them to Laci's disappearance. During the search, they found the hair caught in Scott's pliers on his fishing boat. The FBI analyzed the hair and matched it to Laci's DNA. In addition to the home search, the FBI also investigated Scott's truck and warehouse for any signs of evidence. They also examined Scott's boat, where they found a homemade anchor made with a 90-pound bag of concrete. Scott claimed he used the concrete to repair his driveway, but investigators believed he had actually made multiple anchors, using them to weigh down Laci's body in the San Francisco Bay. The police identified the bodies found in the San Francisco Bay as Laci and Connor. This led to Scott's arrest near a golf course. At the time of his arrest, Scott's appearance had changed significantly, as his dark brown hair was now blonde. A search of his vehicle revealed a large amount of cash, $115,000, as well as survival gear, camping equipment, and 4 cell phones. The police also found 2 driver's licenses, one belonging to Scott and the other linked to his brother. This evidence suggested that Scott was planning to escape the state. Scott's father provided an alternative explanation for the driver's license found in Scott's car. According to his father, Scott had borrowed his brother's license to get a discount at the golf course. The father also explained that Scott's car was packed with belongings because Scott was living out of his car to avoid the media attention surrounding his case. A year after his arrest, Scott's trial began in June 2004. During the opening arguments, the prosecution presented its case, claiming that Scott's affair with Amber was the motive for Laci's murder. The prosecution highlighted Scott's suspicious behavior before and after Laci's disappearance, including inconsistencies in his alibi. Initially, Scott told police he was fishing on the day Laci went missing, but later told others he was golfing. The prosecution also pointed out that Scott asked police if they had used cadaver dogs to search a park where Laci walked their dog, suggesting that Scott was aware of the potential crime scene and trying to cover his tracks. In response, Scott's defense team presented a strong argument. They acknowledged Scott's history of infidelity but argued that it did not necessarily make him guilty of murder. They claimed that Scott would not ruin his life for someone he had only dated a few times. The defense suggested that a possible explanation for Laci's hair being found in Scott's boat was a previous visit to the marina with Laci. Other witnesses, including a realtor and a salesman, testified that Scott was actively trying to sell their home and trade in Laci's car, respectively, in the months following her disappearance. The prosecution presented this evidence as proof of Scott's guilt. Additionally, Amber, Scott's mistress, testified about their affair, and the jury listened to secretly recorded phone calls between they. During Scott's trial, a hydrologist and a tidal expert testified that it was possible for Laci's body to have been dumped in the area where Scott claimed to have been fishing on the day she disappeared. However, the defense argued that there was not enough credible evidence to link Scott directly to the crime. They proposed an alternative theory, that someone had kidnapped Laci on Christmas Eve 2002, held her captive until she gave birth, and then disposed of both bodies in the San Francisco Bay. Scott's attorney emphasized that there was no direct evidence connecting Scott to the crime and suggested that other suspects could have been responsible. On November 12, 2004, the jury in California found Scott guilty of 2 counts of murder, first-degree murder for Laci's death and second-degree murder for the death of their unborn son, Connor. Laci's murder was classified as first-degree murder with special circumstances due to the involvement of the fetus. Scott's classification made him eligible for the death penalty. After his conviction, the trial's penalty phase began, focusing on determining his punishment. The jury considered his criminal history, aggravating factors, and mitigating factors before unanimously deciding on the death penalty. In August 2020, the California court upheld Scott's conviction but vacated his death sentence, with the judge ordering Scott to be resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As a result, Scott was transferred from San Quentin State Prison, where he had been on death row, to Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, California, on the judge's order. In response to Laci's case, President George W. Bush signed the Unborn Victims of Violence Act into law on April 1, 2004. Laci's mother and stepfather attended the signing ceremony, standing alongside President George W. Bush as the legislation took effect. This law, also known as Laci and Connor's Law, aimed to provide legal protection for unborn children in cases where their mothers are victims of violence. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Megan Lodowski. Megan Lodowski lived with her family in Portsmouth, Virginia, a bustling seaport town. Her family included her father, Chris Short, a Navy officer, her mother, Angela, and two other siblings. Chris Short had been transferred to a naval hospital in Portsmouth after a year stationed at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. Chris's family felt relieved when they moved there. Megan Lodowski, 16 years old, was the oldest in the family. When her family moved, she quickly signed up for dance classes. Megan had a deep passion for dance and showed outstanding talent from the beginning. She started with ballet and then expanded into many different genres. Megan's mother described her as a beautiful, friendly, and talented girl. Megan adapted quickly to her new learning environment at Woodrow Wilson High School. She had an attractive personality and easily made friends with her classmates. Although she attended a prestigious high school that specialized in dance, Megan wanted to attend a regular high school so she could hang out with friends in her neighborhood. She was described as vivacious and kind, with a natural tendency to connect with people. On Thursday, April 10, 2008, Megan woke up early to go to school. She chatted with her mother about the upcoming test before going to class. After saying goodbye to Angela, Megan went to school. Angela had no idea that this would be the last time she would see her daughter alive. Megan's school day ended early, and she went home. Angela had told Megan that she expected Megan's call when she got home. Upon arriving, Megan left a voicemail detailing how her day went, reassuring Angela that she had returned safely, and ending by telling Angela she loved her. Then she continued to prepare lunch for herself. However, things took a terrifying and disturbing turn around 4 p.m. Megan's stepfather, Chris, returned home and found the door open. Although he didn't worry at first, he knew Megan had been warned about leaving the door open, so he trusted that she wouldn't leave it unattended like that. He called her name, but there was only silence. When he entered the kitchen, he was faced with a horrifying sight: Megan lying motionless on the floor. Chris quickly called the police and reported the incident. Local detective Doug Funkhauser suddenly received an alarming call reporting the murder of a young girl in town. Immediately, he rushed to the location of the crime, Roberts Court in Portsmouth. When he approached the scene of the crime, he saw horrifying signs. The bloodstains on the door handle were very clear. When he entered the kitchen, he discovered a gruesome scene. The body of a young girl lay on the floor, her body seriously injured. Megan had suffered multiple stab wounds on her back, neck, face, and throat, and her mouth was sealed with tape. For Detective Doug, this case was one of the most brutal cases he had ever investigated. An initial investigation revealed no signs of forced entry. However, a leaf found inside the home matched a bush outside a first-floor window, suggesting that the killer may have entered through that window. In the upstairs bedroom, signs of a struggle were evident on the bed. Megan's underwear was on the floor, and a box of duct tape was found under the left corner of the bed, appearing to match the tape used to bind Megan's hands and face. Forensic experts found blood on the tape and other items, which were collected for further analysis, including pillows, sheets, and blankets. Additional forensic testing indicated that the bedroom was the scene of the sexual assault, as traces of the killer's semen were found on Megan's comforter and underwear. These findings suggested that Megan had been assaulted in the bedroom before the attack downstairs. Megan was found with a large number of injuries, 43 stab wounds, including 11 post-mortem. The forensic team also reported that Megan was naked from the waist down, with her hands bound behind her back with duct tape. The murder weapon was determined to be a missing kitchen knife. Investigators later found the knife in the sink and determined that the initial attack had occurred in the bedroom, but Megan had somehow escaped down the stairs. Investigators discovered that the perpetrator left footprints during the crime and then washed his hands in the kitchen sink. A second knife used in the crime was discovered in a nearby drain. Detectives quickly searched the neighborhood for witnesses, but no one provided any useful information. The killer appeared to have escaped undetected during the day. After the shock of their daughter's murder, Angela and Chris quickly alerted the police to their suspicions regarding the identity of the killer. They suspected an old acquaintance with a troubled past and believed he may be involved in the case. This person is Robert Hickey, a former colleague of Chris's in the Navy who had sexually assaulted Megan when she was 16. Chris and Robert had worked together as technicians and had become close friends, often inviting Robert and his family to their home. Megan's behavior changed dramatically after the abuse. She became withdrawn, and her grades began to decline. Chris noticed the change and asked her what was wrong, but she was initially reluctant to talk about it. Eventually, Megan confided in Chris, revealing that Robert had been sexually assaulting her in secret. Chris was furious and immediately cut off ties with the Hickeys. He also reported the abuse to the authorities. Around the same time, Megan's parents filed a lawsuit against Robert, just 5 months before she was murdered. The trial is pending, and Megan is expected to testify against him. Robert has a lot at stake, including his reputation and his freedom. Megan expressed concern that Robert might try to harm her to prevent her from testifying, and unfortunately, it appears that her fears have come true. When police searched Robert's home, they did not find any direct evidence linking him to Megan's murder. However, upon closer inspection of his computer, they discovered that he had attempted to erase the hard drive. Investigators were able to recover a recently deleted file containing sexually explicit images of minors. This discovery led to Robert being charged with possession of child pornography and becoming the prime suspect in Megan's murder. He was brought in for questioning, and authorities hope that he will confess to the crime. Robert was visibly nervous throughout the interview, but he insisted that he was at the Navy base on the day of Megan's murder. He denied any involvement and claimed he had not left the base. However, after verifying his alibi with his colleagues, the police discovered a gap in his timeline, raising the possibility that he might have been involved in the murder. The police obtained surveillance footage from the base but found no evidence that Robert had left. Despite this, he remained a suspect. To investigate further, a DNA sample was taken from Robert to compare with the DNA found at the crime scene. The results showed no match, ruling out Robert as the killer. This discovery left the police without any leads or suspects, leaving them frustrated. They then turned their attention to Chris, who had discovered Megan's body. After taking a DNA sample from Chris, he was quickly cleared. Megan's family members, including her younger brother, Corey, were also ruled out as suspects. The autopsy revealed that the murder was extremely brutal, indicating that the perpetrator had used extreme violence against Megan. Given Megan's popularity and gentle nature, it was difficult to narrow the investigation based on hostile relationships. This made the identity of the killer even more mysterious. The investigation into Megan's case did not produce any suspects. Detectives focused on Megan's life at school and interviewed each of her friends. Megan's best friend was interviewed but did not provide any useful information. Police then spoke to other friends and acquaintances from Woodrow Wilson High School and learned that Megan had dated a few people but nothing too serious. Although these men did not appear to be suspects, police asked them to provide DNA samples as a precaution. Meanwhile, experts retested DNA from the crime scene, which suggested that the killer was likely an African American male. For 6 months, no major developments were made, but that changed when a helpful classmate provided valuable information, a list of boys with whom Megan had occasionally flirted. Police looked through the list and found that they had spoken to all of the boys on the list, except for one, a 17-year-old named Robert Lee Barnes. Megan and Robert Barnes were both in the performing arts program at Churchill High School. Megan confided in her friend that she believed Robert might have a crush on her. At school, Robert was considered an excellent violinist, and as a student, he had always earned good grades, exhibited exemplary behavior, and had no disciplinary problems. As one of Megan's friends, Robert visited Megan's home several times, showing respectful behavior during these visits, and Megan's parents were very fond of him. When the police questioned Robert about Megan, he described her as a kind and pleasant person and was shocked that someone would want to harm her. He mentioned that he and Megan had attended shows together and occasionally hung out. However, towards the end of the interview, Robert's demeanor changed when he was asked to provide a DNA sample. Unlike Megan's other classmates, who were cooperative with the request, Robert hesitated and then refused, which aroused the suspicion of the investigators. Robert said that his mother did not allow the DNA test, but the police informed him that his parents' permission was not required because he was almost 18 years old. However, Robert still refused. This refusal made the investigators feel uncomfortable and suspicious that something was wrong with Robert. Therefore, after the interview ended, the investigators suggested that he talk to his mother and try again. The day after the initial investigation, Robert contacted the authorities to request a meeting. When asked if he had obtained his mother's permission, he replied that he had not, but he had given them a piece of his chewing gum as a DNA sample. Robert removed the gum from his mouth, placed it in a rubber glove, and gave it to the investigators. Despite this, the investigators remained suspicious of Robert. The DNA lab then contacted the detective to inquire about the sample's source. After confirming that Robert had indeed placed the gum in the glove, the lab questioned whether he had been continuously monitored while providing the gum. This investigation was prompted by the surprising fact that the DNA on the gum matched that of a woman. It turned out that Robert had switched the gum he was chewing with another piece before handing it to the investigators. On October 23, 2008, Robert was called in for questioning again, this time with his mother. When confronted with the DNA findings, Robert was asked about the chewing gum. He made a critical mistake by stating, "This happened on Thursday." Up until that point, none of the individuals interviewed by the police knew the exact date and time of the murder. When the officers pointed this out to Robert, he provided an implausible explanation. According to Robert, on that Thursday, Megan had asked him to visit her home. Upon his arrival, Robert claimed to have found Megan being held at gunpoint by a masked individual. The alleged attacker held the gun to Robert, forcing him to tie Megan up. Robert then fabricated a story that he had been compelled to sexually assault Megan. He further claimed that they all went downstairs, where the attacker stabbed Megan after obtaining a knife. Ultimately, Robert stated that the attacker had forced him to inflict an injury on himself to ensure his blood would be present at the crime scene. Robert fabricated a false story to portray himself as the victim and to explain away any incriminating evidence. However, the police did not believe his account. When presented with evidence of footprints found at the scene, the investigator asked Robert why only his footprints were found and not those of the person he claimed had attacked him. Robert's mother intervened, telling Robert to stop talking and asserting that Robert was a good and innocent person. The police then took a DNA sample from Robert. The DNA analysis showed a match between Robert's DNA and the DNA found at the crime scene. As a result, Robert Barnes was arrested for the murder of Megan Lodowski. According to police, Robert likely broke into the house through a window that afternoon, surprising Megan in her bedroom. He then attacked her, and when she tried to escape downstairs, he chased her, stabbing her multiple times with a kitchen knife, even after she was dead. After the crime, Robert left the scene and continued his life as if nothing had happened. Investigators believe that Robert became unhealthily obsessed with Megan, who only wanted a friendship. When Robert's romantic advances were rejected, he turned to coercion, which led to a tragic end. In September 2009, Robert accepted a plea deal that allowed him to be tried as a juvenile, despite having just turned 18. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and aggravated sexual assault. As a result, Robert Lee Barnes was sentenced to 42 years in prison and is currently serving his sentence at Red Onion State Prison in Wise County, Virginia. Regardless of the motive behind Robert's actions, whether it was love, lust, bitterness, or the pain of rejection, none of these reasons justify his horrific crimes against the person he claimed to love and care for. Robert chose the path of destruction, taking the life of an innocent person and ruining his own life. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of William Lewis Reese. William Lewis Reese was born in Oklahoma on July 1, 1959, the youngest of 13 children in his family. He grew up in Yukon and Anadarko. Due to his family's financial struggles, he had to drop out of school in the 9th grade to work as a farm laborer. He married Judy Flaming in 1979 after she became pregnant. After getting married, William joined the Oklahoma National Guard but eventually left. During this time, his marriage began to unravel, and Judy divorced him after just 1 year. However, William convinced Judy to remarry him, and they had another child together. Unfortunately, their marriage problems persisted, and heavy drinking led to physical abuse against Judy, ultimately causing their marriage to end again. Judy filed a complaint against her husband in 1982 after he physically abused her, claiming that he also threatened her life with a knife and a shotgun. As a result, Judy divorced him for the second time. William later remarried to another woman. However, this marriage was also short-lived, as his second wife divorced him just a few months later. And William's string of crimes resumed shortly after. In April 1986, William kidnapped a 19-year-old woman who was the daughter of a Texas sheriff's deputy. The woman's car broke down on her way to the gym. And William, who worked as a truck driver at that time, approached her and offered assistance by promising to take her to the nearest payphone in his truck. Once inside the vehicle, he restrained her and committed a sexual assault. He then drove her to a nearby motel where he reserved a room for the night. When Williams gave her permission to use the bathroom, she took advantage of the chance to break free and phone the police. He then was arrested, charged, and then released after posting bail. However, a month later, while still awaiting trial, he committed another sexual assault, resulting in a second arrest. Williams stood trial for both crimes, was found guilty, and received the 25 years prison sentence. However, upon reviewing his case, an appeals court found that there were procedural errors in the original trial. As a result, his sentence was significantly shortened and ultimately led to his parole in October 1996. William moved into his mother's home in Anadarko, Oklahoma, after serving 9.5 years. He regained his driver's license in early 1997 and then relocated to Houston, Texas. Shortly after, on May 16, 1997, he attempted to abduct and sexually assault Sandra Sapah, a 19-year-old. when Sandra stopped at a gas station in Webster, Texas, to use a payphone. After the call, she returned to her car and began driving, but soon had a flat tire, forcing her to stop again. As she stood there, unsure of what to do next, William stopped the car behind her and offered to help. Sandra accepted his offer and got into the truck. However, William's intentions were sinister, and he overpowered her, binding her wrists, then he continuing to drive on Interstate 45. Panicking, Sandra discovered that the door was unlocked. Despite being pregnant and fear for her life, Sandra made an attempt to escape by breaking free from the restraints and jumping out. Unfortunately, William caught hold of her and dragged her several miles along the pavement, causing severe injuries. Eventually, Sandra managed to break free and was taken to a nearby hospital. The police were notified, and she provided a description of her attacker. However, due to her traumatic state, she was unable to recall crucial details about the incident. To catch the predator, detectives needed more information. Months after the attack, they decided to use hypnosis on Sandra to see if she could remember anything else. Under hypnosis, Sandra recalled crucial details, including the license plate number of the truck that was involved in the crime. The detectives discovered a lead when they tracked down the owner of the vehicle with the matching license plate number. William was convicted of aggravated kidnapping and sentenced to 60 years in prison in 1998. While he was serving his sentence, detectives began to suspect that he might be linked to other crimes. Unraveling these secrets took years, leaving several families without answers. On a rainy April 3, 1997, 12-year-old Laura Smither asked her mother for permission to go jogging by herself at 9 a.m. Her mother agreed, not knowing that this ordinary decision would change her life forever. Laura Smither is the daughter of Bob and Gay Smither. She grew up in Friendswood, along with her younger brother. From an early age, Laura demonstrated a kind and gentle nature. She excelled academically and showed great talent in ballet. After being accepted into the prestigious Houston Ballet Academy, her goal of becoming a professional ballerina became a reality just days before this tragic incident. Laura's mother was surprised when she asked to go jogging that day, as she rarely ventured out alone. Homeschooled by her parents, Laura didn't even attend school. However, her desire to improve her dance skills had recently inspired her to take up cardio exercises, such as jogging. She had planned to go for a short run while making breakfast, and her mother agreed, she unaware of the danger lurking nearby. When Laura failed to return after a few hours, her parents began to worry. Normally, Laura was under close supervision and never went out alone for long. Her father, Bob Smither, searched the neighborhood but found no sign of her. He figured his daughter wouldn't be out for long, but she later didn't come back. Laura's parents reached out to relatives and friends to see if anyone had any information about her whereabouts, but no one had seen her. And they contacted the police to file a missing persons report. According to Bob, Laura went jogging this morning and it took longer than he expected. As police began their investigation, locals joined Laura's family to assist in the search. With photos of Laura in hand, her family and neighbors went door to door, asking if anyone had any information. The next morning, the police resumed their search, on foot combing through the nearby woods and helicopters scouring the area from above. Despite the initial lack of leads, the community's determination never wavered. Hundreds of volunteers joined the cause, and the eventually swelling to 6,000 volunteers for a week. Meanwhile, law enforcement agencies worked diligently to locate Laura. The National Coast Guard and the FBI also joined forces with the local police department to aid in the extensive search operation. Initial theories suggested that Laura may have become lost in the woods, but after that, the investigation went in one direction, now focus on the possibility of criminal behavior. On Sunday, April 20, 1997, a gathering at Friendswood High School was taking place to discuss the next steps in finding Laura. During this meeting, the police chief expression became anxious after receiving the phone call, leaving those present there wondering what made him react like that. That evening at 10 p.m., Laura's parents received devastating news. A man walking his dog near a retention pond in Pasadena, about 12 miles from where Laura went missing, stumbled upon a badly decomposing body of a young girl. The girl was wearing only a pair of socks and was found in a muddy area. The police immediately suspected that the body was Laura's, and this was later confirmed through an autopsy. Everyone was devastated by the sudden and tragic loss of Laura. In addition to their grief, fear gripped the neighborhood, with many worried that a predator was on the loose and could target another child. To address these concerns and prevent further harm, the police opened an investigation, but initially they had no information about the perpetrator. To gather more information, the police started interviewing sex offenders in the area. They began to focus on William Reese, a 38-year-old equipment operator, was working at Windsor Estate in Friendswood at the time. On the day of Laura's disappearance, William left the workplace around the time she went missing and returned 30 minutes later, it raising suspicions about his activities during that short period. Police conducted an in-depth investigation but were unable to find any evidence shows that William is involved in this crime. As a result, the case went unsolved for years, leaving many questions unanswered. 19 years later, another mysterious disappearance happened to Kelly Cox, 20 years old. Kelly, a criminology student at the University of North Texas, in Denton on July 15, 1997, she and her classmates took a field trip to a local prison in Denton for a criminology class. She left her car in the parking lot across from the police station and had hidden a spare key in a magnetic box underneath her car. She then locked her belongings, including her cell phone, inside the car as instructed by her professor. After completing the jail tour at noon, Kelly rushed to her car to go to the university to take a test. However, when she tried to use the spare key to open her car door, it did not work, despite she checking it the night before. Since Kelly's phone was locked in her car, so she went to a nearby gas station and used a payphone to call her boyfriend, Lawrence Harris III, for help. She then purchased a drink inside the gas station. But from that point on, Kelly was never seen alive again. After about 45 minutes, Lawrence arrived at the meeting place, but when he got there, her car was still in the parking lot, yet Kelly herself was nowhere to be found. Neither the key box nor the key were present at the scene. He spent some time searching for Kelly, and when he couldn't find her, he decided to call her mother to see if she had returned home safely. However, Kelly's mother informed him that she hadn't arrived. Despite the initial suspicion surrounding Kelly's disappearance, but her family chose to wait a little longer to see if she would come back. It wasn't until 5:30 p.m. that same day when Kelly failed to pick up her 19-month-old daughter, Alexis, from her babysitter, that her family became certain that something was amiss. Kelly's family knew that she was a responsible mother, and it was entirely out of character for her to neglect her daughter like that. When Kelly was reported missing, the police immediately started searching for her. In keeping with standard procedure in missing persons cases, the police started by scrutinizing people close to Kelly. Initially, they focused on Kelly's boyfriend Lawrence, but after he passed 4 polygraph tests, he was cleared as a suspect. The case made progress when information led them to another potential suspect, William Reese, who had been under investigation in the Laura Smithers case. William, a sex offender, was considered a top suspect in Kelly's disappearance because a gas station receipt placed him in the Denton area on the same day Kelly vanished, even though he didn't live there at the time. The police searched his car for Kelly's fingerprints but did not find any. Without any leads, witnesses, or surveillance footage, the case stalled and went unsolved for many years. Kelly's disappearance was extremely difficult for her mother and stepfather, who had to raise Alexis on their own. As the years went by, Kelly never returned, but her daughter followed in her mother's footsteps, attending the same university. Alexis held on to the hope that her mother would come back one day. Kelly's family never lost hope of her return, continued to share her story, and kept her picture visible. Unfortunately, their wish never came true, and Kelly never made it back home. On the morning of August 17, 1997, Jessica Cain, a 17-year-old high school student, failed to return home after attending a theater party the night before. Jessica was born on August 28, 1979. She is known for her vibrant personality, creativity, and passion for sports. While studying at O'Connell High School in Galveston, Texas, she did well academically and served as captain of the school's coaching team. After focusing on her drama career and participating in numerous plays, Jessica attended a musical review in Dickinson on August 16, 1997. Following the event, she joined her friends at a cast party at Bennigan's on Bay Avenue Boulevard. However, Jessica did not return home that night, worrying her mother, who woke her father and called her. They reached out to several friends who had attended the party with Jessica, and all of them reported that she had left around 1:30 a.m. Jessica's parents immediately sensed that something was wrong and began searching for her. Upon investigating, Jessica's father found her vehicle parked near the Lamarck exit, close to the freeway, with her valuables still intact. He later quickly reported his to the police. As police began their investigation, hundreds of volunteers joined in the search for Jessica. During this challenging time, Jessica's parents met Bob and Gay Smither, a couple who had also lost their daughter, Laura Smither. Jessica's family and the Smithers family are going through their own grief. The Smithers family has tried to support Jessica's parents in their search for her. Despite the best efforts of police and volunteers, no sign of Jessica has been found. As a result, police are beginning to consider foul play and believe the chances of Jessica being found alive are extremely low. The case eventually went cold, but Jessica's family never gave up searching for their daughter. In a separate incident, on July 26, 1997, 19-year-old Tiffany Johnson's car was found abandoned at a car wash in Bethany, Oklahoma. But she disappeared without a trace. Tiffany was born on April 6, 1978, to Michael and Kathy Dober. She was the youngest daughter, extremely close to her family, especially her mother. Tiffany was a lively and optimistic young woman who grew up in a small town, with a passion for plants and gardening that she inherited from her grandfather. After graduating from high school in 1996, she married Ryan Johnson in 1997 and moved to Bethany, Oklahoma, where she took on 2 jobs to save money for college. Her dream was to attend Oklahoma State University to pursue a degree in botany. But unfortunately, that goal was never realized. On July 26, 1997, Tiffany finished her part-time shift at a restaurant around 2 p.m. She later headed home to get ready for a night out with her husband, Ryan, to celebrate their 3-month anniversary. Tiffany was supposed to meet Ryan at 11 p.m., but before that, she stopped at the Sunshine Car Wash to wash her white neon Dodge. Tragically, she was never seen again. When Ryan went looking for her that night, he couldn't find her at home and found no signs of her whereabouts. A police officer from the Bethany Police Department discovered Tiffany's abandoned white Dodge Neon at a car wash around midnight. The car's key was still in the ignition, and the door was open. The officer found Tiffany's purse inside the vehicle and a phone number for her mother, Kathy, in the glove box. However, when contacted, Kathy had no information about her daughter's whereabouts. The investigators then reached out to Tiffany's husband, Ryan, who also claimed to be unaware of his wife's location. This raised concerns, and it became apparent that something was amiss. The next day, July 27, 1997, near I-40 and Gregory Road, searchers found the body of a young Caucasian woman. When the police arrived at the scene, they suspected the body might be Tiffany's. The suspicion was confirmed when her husband Ryan identified the body from the pictures. Tiffany's body was found with only a swimsuit on, as all other clothing had been removed. The autopsy results revealed that Tiffany was sexually assaulted and strangled to death, although the exact time of her death could not be confirmed. Authorities collected unknown DNA from her body as evidence. With no leads on a suspect, investigators initially focused on Ryan, Tiffany's husband. However, they soon discovered that Tiffany was last seen at the car wash at 6 p.m., and Ryan had a solid alibi, having been at work from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. A new lead emerged when the car wash owner contacted investigators, reporting that he saw a customer on the same day Tiffany disappeared. The customer was a man named William Reese, who had been featured in a news report a few months earlier for his involvement in an abduction in Texas. What's more noteworthy is that William has a personal relationship with Tiffany. His mother was good friends with Tiffany's mother, although he himself had never met Tiffany. After her death, he even called Tiffany's mother to offer his condolences. Despite this new information, police were still unable to gather enough evidence to prove William's involvement in Tiffany's murder, and the case remained unsolved for a long time. In 2015, thanks to advancements in DNA technology, investigators found new evidence in the Tiffany case. A DNA swab taken during Tiffany's autopsy in 1997 was sent to the lab for testing. The results matched a DNA profile in the Cody's database, which implicated William in Tiffany's murder. He was subsequently charged in Oklahoma City with the 1997 kidnapping and murder of Tiffany. Just as his trial was about to begin, William unexpectedly started confessing to other crimes in an attempt to reach a deal with the prosecution. Despite having eluded police for 19 years, he ultimately revealed the truth, having a history of aggravated kidnapping and other crimes. When shown photos of Laura Smither, Jessica, and Kelly Cox, he immediately accepted responsibility for their murders and disappearances, although denying any sexual motive behind his actions. William was questioned about his victims in Oklahoma. He agreed to cooperate with authorities by showing them the burial sites of two victims, Jessica and Kelly, on one condition: he would not face the death penalty. In April 2016, investigators followed him to a location in a Houston pasture where human remains were discovered. After several days of excavation, the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed that the remains belonged to Jessica. The search continued in Brazoria County, where another set of human remains was found. Dental records confirmed that these remains belonged to Kelly Cox. The trial for the murder of another victim, Tiffany, began in May 2021. William was found guilty by a jury on May 28, 2021, and received a death sentence on August 19, 2021, for her abduction and murder. After his murder conviction in Oklahoma, he was sent to Texas in March 2022 to face trial for the murders of Laura Smither, Kelly Cox, and Jessica. He pleaded guilty to all three charges and received a life imprisonment sentence in June 2022. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Christina Craft. Christina Rose Carlin Craft was born on November 11, 1983, in southern New Jersey, to Stuart Craft and Dawn Carlin. From a young age, she enjoyed being in front of the camera, whether it was being photographed or videotaped. After graduating from high school in Linwood in 2000, Christina worked as a waitress in southern New Jersey and later at the Borgata Hotel Casino and Spa in Atlantic City. Although she had a stable job, her true aspiration was to become a model. Christina's determination eventually paid off, and she achieved some success in the modeling industry. In her promotional materials, she expressed her love for posing in elegant lingerie and swimwear. According to Eva Waltz, a friend Christina met while working on a 3-day photo shoot for Maxim magazine, Christina was a charming and beautiful person with a great sense of humor. With her dark hair and blue eyes, she embodied the qualities of a fashion model. Christina's ultimate goal was to appear on the cover of Playboy. In 2003, while still working as a waitress at the Borgata Casino, Christina met Alex Caiatelli, and they soon began dating. Alex supports Christina's ambitions and never hindered her career. They got engaged after a long relationship. During this time, Christina became Cyber Girl of the Month in May 2009, earning an invitation to the Playboy Mansion, where she attended exclusive events and experienced luxury. At the height of her career, Christina's ambitions soared, particularly after meeting Hugh Hefner. Unfortunately, despite her efforts, she failed to secure a modeling contract with Playboy magazine, a highly competitive opportunity that only one girl among thousands of applicants can attain. Christina faced significant obstacles in becoming a top model at that time. One major issue was her age. At 26, she was considered too old for certain magazines that typically feature younger models. Despite this, she continued to work hard, landing jobs with prominent companies like Redken, Maxim, Victoria's Secret, and Vanity Fair. Determined to advance her career, Christina moved to New York with her boyfriend Alex. However, her decision to pose for Playboy proved to be a setback. Many brands were hesitant to work with her after the explicit photo shoot, and her career began to decline. Eventually, it came to a complete halt. It was a challenging time for Christina, but she was grateful to have Alex's support to help her through it. Christina was a woman known for both her physical beauty and her controversial behavior. In 2016, she caused a disturbance at the Smith, a New York restaurant. Following the incident, the New York Post published several articles about what had happened. According to law enforcement sources and court documents, Christina Craft, 34, was dining at the Smith with a male friend on March 6 when an argument broke out over the bill. The man refused to pay, and the manager, Sergei Anakin, intervened. Christina, who was reportedly intoxicated, claimed the manager had pushed her, but a video of the incident showed that was not true. During the altercation, Christina allegedly hit a police officer on the neck, causing redness and significant pain. She was subsequently charged with misdemeanor assault, attempted assault, and harassment. However, after the district attorney offered her a deal, the charges were dropped on the condition that she stayed out of trouble for 6 months. Christina's lawyer explained that she accepted a reasonable deal offered by the district attorney. Christina had always been fond of Philadelphia, particularly Ardmore, where she felt a strong sense of safety. Considering this, Alex purchased an apartment for her in Ardmore, and they of them relocated to Pennsylvania in 2018. However, Christina soon discovered that Ardmore did not live up to her expectations of being a safe haven. In fact, on August 18, 2018, she reported a robbery to the police. Christina spent the evening at a bar in Philadelphia, but her memories of the night are hazy. The next morning, she woke up with no recollection of how she got home or if anyone was with her. She suspected that someone had drugged her with illegal substances. Feeling scared, she confided in others about her concerns. Her partner, Alex, was away on a business trip at the time, which added to her anxiety. The police investigation into the incident uncovered CCTV footage that showed a car arriving at Christina's apartment building around 3 a.m. The footage revealed that Christina was unconscious in the back seat. The driver, who was later identified as the perpetrator, took Christina's keys from her purse and entered her apartment. Once inside, the thief stole over $50,000 worth of valuables, including jewelry, designer handbags, sunglasses, a credit card, and personal documents. The perpetrator spent about an hour and a half in Christina's apartment before returning to the car. He then helped Christina out of the vehicle and into her apartment building, leaving her in the hallway. The thief put the keys back in Christina's purse and drove away, leaving her disoriented and frightened. The police were able to identify the perpetrator of the robbery with the help of a credit card statement. The culprit was Andre Melton, a man with a prior criminal record. At the time of the robbery, Melton was driving a rented 2018 Kia Sorento with a Virginia license plate. Witnesses reported seeing the same car near Christina's house on August 17, a sighting confirmed by police using specialized license plate recognition software. As the police searched for Melton and worked to recover Christina's stolen belongings, a far more serious crime occurred. On August 22, 2018, Alex Cayatelli called the police to ask them to check on his girlfriend, Christina Craft, as he was unable to contact her. When he arrived home, he found the apartment door locked from the inside. A review of the security system revealed that someone had opened the front door and balcony door overnight. The police were forced to break down the front door to gain entry. Upon entering the apartment, they immediately discovered a crime scene, with a body on the bed covered in a blanket and blood visible. Christina Craft's brutally beaten body was discovered under a blanket. She had suffered severe injuries, including a broken nose and strangulation marks on her neck. When Christina's identity was confirmed, the news of her death was devastating to Alex. As the police investigated further, they couldn't rule out the possibility that Alex might be involved in her murder. After all, the closest people to the victim are often the prime suspects. Christina and Alex had a long history together, and anything could have happened between them. The fact that Alex had called the police to express his concern about Christina, only to have her body discovered shortly after, raised suspicions. It was possible that Alex had staged his concern to divert attention from himself. The detectives asked him to accompany them to the police station for questioning, and Alex agreed without hesitation. Alex told investigators he had to return to New York for urgent work on August 21. On August 22, at 2:30 a.m., he called Christina to say goodnight, but she didn't answer. Since Christina was always awake at that hour, Alex grew concerned. He called her several more times, but got no response. He then checked the security system and found suspicious activity at the apartment that night. Alex decided to put his business on hold and return to Ardmore immediately. The police believed Alex's story and ruled him out as a suspect, as it was impossible for him to be in two places at once. His alibi checked out, and the police cleared him of any involvement in Christina's death. The main suspect in Christina's murder was initially Andre Melton, who had previously stolen valuables from her apartment. It's possible that he returned to the apartment to steal again, but his plan was foiled when Christina caught him. Alternatively, he may have discovered that she had reported him to the police and sought revenge. On August 22, the day Christina's body was discovered, the police obtained an arrest warrant for Andre Melton. When they went to his residence, they found some of Christina's belongings, but Melton was nowhere to be found. However, surveillance footage from the night of the crime revealed that Christina had returned to her apartment with an unknown man at 3:08 a.m., but it wasn't Andre Melton. Further analysis of the footage showed that the unknown man did not leave the apartment. To investigate further, police reviewed CCTV footage from the streets of Ardmore and discovered that Christina had visited a bar in Philadelphia before returning to her apartment. At the bar, investigators found footage of Christina meeting a man who later hugged her, the same man she had returned to her apartment with. Christina and a new acquaintance hailed a taxi after leaving the bar. Detectives tracked her movements to rebuild the timeline of events leading up to her death. They eliminated Melton as a suspect since he wasn't with her that day. They still had to determine if her death was connected to the earlier robbery or just a coincidence. On August 25, the police got a new lead. Andrew Sanford, the taxi driver who drove Christina and her companion that night. He reported that Christina and her friend had approached him, and they didn't use the taxi app. After agreeing on a fare, they got into the taxi. According to Sanford, the couple seemed affectionate and friendly, so they didn't raise any suspicions. Sanford also remembered that when they arrived at their destination, Christina took the initiative to settle the fare. However, she didn't have any cash on her. She offered to leave her credit card, but Sanford refused. Then, Christina's friend offered him $100 if he would wait 10 to 15 minutes near the house while they went to the apartment. Sanford left 20 minutes later, as neither Christina nor her friend returned. Christina and the man entered their apartment around 3 a.m. At 4 a.m., Christina made a brief call to her cousin, but didn't speak a word. Her cousin, however, heard a man in the background instructing Christina not to call the police. The call ended abruptly, leaving the cousin unclear about what was happening. The police later determined the timeline of the crime using the apartment's door sensors, which recorded the exact times the doors were opened. The data showed that the first door opening occurred at 3:08 a.m. and the next at 5:10 a.m. Since the apartment was on the second floor, the investigators suspected that the perpetrator had left through the sliding glass door on the balcony, which was also detected by the security system around the same time. This explained why the surveillance cameras did not capture the moment when the man Christina met at the bar left the apartment. When the police arrived after Alex's call, they found Christina alone in the apartment. Based on this information, the police theorized that the perpetrator escaped by jumping off the balcony. The investigation's next step was to seek the public's help through the media. After releasing the surveillance camera images, the authorities asked anyone with information to come forward. The photos showed two individuals, Andre Melton and the second person who was at Christina's apartment on the night of her death. Surprisingly, Andre Melton called the police by himself, admitting to stealing from Christina but denying involvement in her murder. On August 26, the police station received an anonymous call from a man who claimed to know one of the suspects in the recent crime. The caller revealed that he had shared a room with the suspect at a psychiatric clinic in Philadelphia. According to the caller, the suspect had previously assaulted a woman in Love Park and molesting her. The suspect became aggressive, shouting and causing a disturbance, and was eventually hospitalized for 2 hours at a cost of $70. However, he was not identified. The caller provided more chilling information. The suspect had bragged about strangling a woman and felt proud and satisfied by the act. This new information convinced investigators that the suspect was likely responsible for the murder of Christina Craft. The police received another call from a Philadelphia relative of the suspect, who identified the man in the photo as Jonathan Wesley Harris, a convicted felon with a history of robbery. Harris had been released from prison on July 15, just 5 weeks before Christina's murder. After studying the suspect's entire biography, it became clear that Andre Melton and Jonathan Harris had no prior connection and had never met. As a result, the police ruled out any link between their crimes. Additionally, the police gained access to Harris's phone messages. On August 22, he texted a friend that he had met an attractive woman and was going to her apartment. On August 28, the police obtained an arrest warrant for Jonathan Harris. It was essential to apprehend him as soon as possible, as no one knew what he might do next. However, Harris had left no trail. When investigators contacted Harris's sister on August 29, 2018, she revealed that he had recently purchased a bus ticket to Pittsburgh. As it turned out, Harris was already on the bus when the conversation took place. The Ardor police were unable to act, and the officers wouldn't be able to catch up with him. The Pittsburgh police were their last hope. Timing was crucial, and the police investigating Christina's death contacted the Pittsburgh Law Enforcement Agency for assistance. They informed the task force of the bus's expected arrival time in Pittsburgh and shared a photo of Harris, helping them plan a strategic ambush. The officers blocked off all potential escape routes and were prepared to apprehend the suspect at a moment's notice. As the bus approached, one of the employees spotted Harris and allowed him to disembark calmly, reducing the likelihood of panic or chaotic behavior. About 10 minutes later, a police officer intercepted Harris. Harris gave a false name when asked to identify himself. He was arrested and taken to the police station, where detectives from Philadelphia interrogated him about his involvement in Christina's case. Harris claimed that he met Christina at a bar or nightclub, where she was alone and he approached her. He admitted to being under the influence of both illegal substances and alcohol at the time. After chatting and having a drink, Christina invited him to her place. Once they arrived, Harris asked the taxi driver to wait, intending to return shortly. However, he ended up staying with Christina, and they drank multiple bottles of wine together. He claimed that they then engaged in an intimate relationship with mutual consent and used a prohibited substance. Afterward, Harris demanded that Christina pay him $1,200, which she refused. The situation escalated into a physical altercation when Christina allegedly hit Harris with a wine bottle. In response, Harris claimed he hit her in the face, causing her to fall to the floor. When Christina attempted to call for emergency assistance, Harris strangled her with sweatpants until she lost consciousness. Despite his account, several inconsistencies were found in his story. During the toxicology examination, experts found no prohibited substances in Christina's body, only alcohol. This contradicted the suspect's initial claim that he had only hit her once. When confronted with the results, Harris admitted to lying. Harris initially tried to convince detectives of his innocence, claiming Christina was fine when he left her apartment. However, during a subsequent interrogation, he fully confessed to his guilt. He explained that he had panicked after severely beating her, leaving her while she was still breathing, and covering her with a blanket to avoid the sight. Ultimately, Jonathan Harris confessed to taking Christina's life and attempting to escape detection by jumping off the balcony. Despite his earlier confession, Harris pleaded not guilty at the trial. Nevertheless, the investigators had gathered substantial evidence, making it impossible for Harris and his lawyer to win the case. The court was expected to sentence Jonathan Harris to 22 to 40 years in prison for the crime of third-degree life deprivation. However, the large amount of evidence presented by the prosecutors convinced the court that the crime was intentional, making life imprisonment a possibility. During the trial, a key witness testified against Harris. This witness had shared a room with Harris at a psychiatric clinic and had previously reported Harris to the police. Harris had confessed to the crime while in the clinic, telling the witness that he enjoyed the feeling of squeezing someone and watching them take their last breath. In the end, Judge William R. Carpenter sentenced Jonathan Wesley Harris to 30 years to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge handed down an additional 22 to 45-year sentence to Harris. The lengthy sentence was intended to send a message to future authorities who might consider granting him early release or pardon. In a separate case, Andre Melton was arrested in December 2018 and charged with burglarizing Carlin Craft's apartment. He was sentenced in March 2020 to 1 to 4 years in prison, followed by 3 years of consecutive probation, totaling 7 years under court supervision. Before receiving his sentence, Melton apologized to Carlin Craft's family. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Greg Mulvhill. Diana Lovejoy and Greg Mulvhill connected in 2005 through an online dating site, as they were both living far from their families. They quickly formed a strong bond, and soon after meeting, their relationship turned serious. The couple decided to move in together and make San Diego their home. Diana had a lifelong passion for athletics and fitness. During her high school years, she was involved in various sports, and later she became a competitive triathlete. The outdoors and fitness played a significant role in Diana and Greg's relationship, as they both shared a love for nature and the fresh air. In the 2000s, San Diego, California, emerged as a significant player in the tech industry, and Diana and Greg capitalized on the abundant job opportunities that arose. They excelled in their respective roles, with Diana earning a reputation as a highly dependable and skilled professional among her coworkers. In 2005, Diana and Greg met, and 2 years later, in 2007, they decided to tie the knot. They chose Costa Rica as their honeymoon destination, where they learned to surf together at a surf school. During the early days of their marriage, they enjoyed each other's company, going on numerous adventures. As a couple, they shared a passion for life and seized every opportunity that came their way. After their wedding, Diana and Greg moved to Carlsbad, a picturesque suburb north of San Diego. The area offered a range of attractions, including lagoons, hiking trails, hills, and secluded spots. Diana was particularly drawn to the area and felt a sense of contentment when she moved into her dream home. She loved the scenic landscapes and peaceful surroundings. Carlsbad provided the ideal setting for Diana and Greg to begin their new life together. 3 years into their marriage, Diana and Greg's relationship began to shift. Diana started experiencing symptoms of fibromyalgia, a chronic condition affecting millions globally. Fibromyalgia is marked by widespread pain, tenderness, and tender spots throughout the body. Although the exact cause remains unknown, several factors can contribute to its development. Fibromyalgia posed a significant threat to Diana and Greg's marriage. Diana, once highly motivated and active, driven by her passion for work and adventure, struggled to accept the new limitations imposed by her condition. The need to reduce stress and rest frequently was a drastic change from her previous lifestyle, causing significant challenges for the couple's dynamic. In 2011, Greg planned a trip to Santa Cruz, California, to help Diana unwind and take her mind off her fibromyalgia. As a loving and caring husband, Greg recognized the toll the condition was taking on Diana's life. The chronic muscle pain and fatigue had significantly impacted her well-being, making it difficult for her to maintain her job due to limited energy. Eventually, Diana had to leave her career to focus on managing her symptoms. This decision allowed her to dedicate more time to her health and spend more time at home in Carlsbad. Diana's ultimate dream was to become a mother, raise a child, and watch them grow into a confident and happy individual. Despite trying for years, Diana and Greg struggled to conceive. Unfortunately, Diana suffered multiple miscarriages, which took a heavy emotional and physical toll on her. Losing these pregnancies was devastating for Diana. Diana, who didn't have kids, had 2 beloved cats named Lanny and Turtle. Sadly, Turtle fell ill and passed away. To comfort Diana, Greg got her a new kitten, which she named Taffy. This thoughtful gift really helped Diana cope with her loss. After trying for years to have a baby without success, Diana was surprised to find out she was pregnant. Greg was thrilled and couldn't wait to become a dad. Diana felt the same way, as her dream of becoming a mom was finally coming true. In September 2012, Diana gave birth to a baby boy. Greg took time off work to bond with his newborn son. He loved being a father and cherished every moment with his child. Diana, being a devoted mom, always wanted her son to be healthy and happy. However, as time passed, she started to worry that her son might have a similar condition to her fibromyalgia. Greg was certain their son was healthy and saw no reason to be concerned, but Diana disagreed, convinced he was sick. Despite Greg's confidence in their son's well-being, Diana was adamant he was ill and began researching ways to help him. In her research, Diana discovered guanine, a drug similar to Mucinex, often used to treat chest infections. Some people claimed it could alleviate fibromyalgia symptoms. Diana became determined to give her son high doses of guanine, but Greg strongly opposed this, believing it was unnecessary to medicate their son. Their disagreement over their son's health care created tension in their marriage. When Greg suffered a shoulder injury that forced him to quit his job, the tension escalated. With their household income now reduced, Diana took on a sales job to make up for the financial shortfall. She also attempted to earn money through online cooking videos, with Greg handling the camera work, but this didn't generate the desired income. Additionally, Diana appeared in promotional videos for kitty litter, but this failed to provide a significant financial boost. By the time their son was 2 years old, Diana and Greg's relationship was in serious trouble due to their constant fighting and disagreements over their child's health. Diana often expressed her frustrations to her co-workers, complaining that Greg was unhelpful and unsupportive. In July 2014, the police questioned Greg about the abuse allegations Diana had made against him in multiple reports. As a result, Greg was forced to leave the family home, and Diana and their son were allowed to stay. Diana confided in a close friend about an incident in which she claimed Greg had allegedly assaulted her while she was asleep and heavily medicated. She said that as she regained consciousness, she realized Greg was touching her without her consent. Furthermore, Diana made additional accusations, including a claim that Greg had sexually abused their son. Following Diana's allegations of abuse, Child Protective Services became involved in the situation. Greg vehemently denied the accusations, suggesting that Diana was making them up because he disagreed with her about their son's supposed medical condition. As a result, Greg filed for divorce and requested custody of their son. An investigation was conducted into Greg's alleged abuse of Diana and their son, but the detectives found no evidence to support the claims. A judge subsequently ordered Greg and their son to undergo psychiatric evaluations, which found no indication of abuse. Diana confided in friends about her frustration, feeling that it was her word against Greg's and that she was not being believed. Ultimately, the case against Greg was dropped, and he was awarded joint 50-50 custody of their son, which left Diana devastated. Diana and Greg were in the process of divorcing, but Diana's main concern was still being a great mother to their son. She wanted to distance herself from Greg and his drama and start a new, fulfilling life. As part of their agreement, Diana would stay in the house and she would pay Greg his share of the property. By 2016, things had calmed down between the former couple. They had worked out a shared custody agreement, allowing them to spend equal time with their son. However, everything changed on September 1, 2016, when the Carlsbad Police Department received a distress call from Jason Kovac, a friend of Greg's. Jason told the police that Greg had been shot multiple times and was bleeding heavily. A nearby patrol officer from the Carlsbad Police Department happened to be in the area when Jason's 911 call came in and rushed to the scene. Upon arrival, the officer found Jason and Greg on the side of the road. About half a mile from where they stood, Jason told the officer that's where the incident had taken place. After assessing Greg's condition, the officer quickly realized that waiting for an ambulance would put Greg's life at risk. So, the officer decided to take Greg to the hospital in his own vehicle, driving swiftly to get him there as fast as possible. Meanwhile, minutes after the officer arrived, the SWAT team swooped in and started searching the area for the shooter. Despite their efforts, they couldn't find the person responsible for the shooting. At the hospital, Greg was rushed into emergency surgery, where doctors discovered he had a gunshot wound to his chest. Greg survived the surgery, but was put on life support in the hope that he would eventually wake up on his own. As Greg recovered in the hospital, detectives got a chance to interview his friend Jason Kovac, who was still in shock and fearful. However, Jason seemed willing to explain what had happened to Greg. According to Jason, Greg had contacted him the night in question seeking his help. Greg had received a call from a private investigator claiming to have crucial information and documents that could aid him in his ongoing custody and divorce battle with Diana. Although the investigator hadn't given his name, he provided Greg with a specific meeting time and location. Despite initial reservations about the call, Greg's curiosity prevailed, and he asked Jason to accompany him as backup in case anything went wrong. Jason, worried about Greg's safety, agreed to go along. The two of them armed themselves with a flashlight and a child's baseball bat. When they arrived at the designated location, they realized it was in a remote area, making the situation even more challenging. It was extremely dark, with no street lights and no moonlight, as it was a new moon that night. According to Jason, the caller told Greg that the package with the documents was going to be attached to a large electricity pole. When Greg saw the pole with the package, he approached it, shining a flashlight around the area as he walked. As he scanned the surrounding area, Jason noticed that Greg's flashlight had fixed on something in the bushes. Suddenly, Greg shouted, "Gun!" And within seconds, a gunshot went off, forcing Greg and Jason to run for their lives. Jason recalled that they sprinted towards their car, dodging bullets whizzing past their heads. When they reached the car, Jason realized that Greg had been hit by a bullet and immediately called 911. Although Jason couldn't give the detectives a detailed description of the shooter, he was able to lead them to the exact spot where the shooting had happened. When crime scene investigators searched the area where the shooting took place, they concentrated on the electricity pole, where the caller had told Greg to collect a package. It was near this pole that they made a fascinating discovery: an Angry Birds towel, carefully folded into a perfect square. The detectives were left wondering if someone had deliberately left the towel there to make Greg think it was the package he was supposed to retrieve. According to Jason's statement, he claimed to have heard up to 6 gunshots at the scene, but the investigators found no shell casings or weapon. The absence of forensic evidence suggested to the detectives that the person who shot Greg must have had extensive knowledge and experience of shooting. As the investigators searched the area where Greg was shot, they detected a strong, unpleasant smell of feces in the air, which raised concerns among the detectives. Upon further inspection, one of the investigators found a pile of feces next to a used towel. It seemed the towel had been employed to clean up after someone had defecated. The investigators immediately preserved the feces sample and the towel as potential evidence, carefully packaging them and sending them to the nearest crime lab for forensic analysis. There, experts would examine the samples to identify any possible leads or clues related to the shooting. However, the process of obtaining DNA evidence was slow. Creating a DNA profile from the feces sample and the towel took around a month, which posed a challenge for the detectives who needed to act quickly to find a suspect. In the meantime, the detectives continued to investigate Greg's shooting. They thoroughly analyzed all available evidence and pursued potential leads. One of their areas of focus was Greg's estranged wife, Diana Lovejoy. The detectives brought Diana Lovejoy in for questioning at the police department. During the interrogation, they asked her if she knew about a private investigator who had contacted her estranged husband, Greg, regarding their divorce documents. Diana denied knowing anything about this and claimed she no longer spoke to Greg. Additionally, Diana had an alibi for the time of the shooting, stating she was at home with her son. Diana claimed to have no additional information and was unable to suggest any potential suspects when questioned further. After 24 hours on life support, Greg unexpectedly regained consciousness and began to recover. Once his condition improved, detectives interviewed him. The detectives asked Greg about his estranged wife Diana, wondering if she might be linked to the shooting. Greg acknowledged their past conflicts, ongoing divorce, and custody battle over their son, but doubted Diana was capable of such violence. He insisted he had no enemies and no idea who was behind the shooting. During the investigation's early stages, detectives obtained the phone number used to lure Greg to the remote area where he was attacked. Upon closer examination, they discovered the phone was on a pay-as-you-go plan, making it untraceable. However, they managed to obtain information from the carrier, revealing that the cell phone was purchased at a Best Buy near Carlsbad. One of the detectives quickly got in touch with the manager of the Best Buy in question and asked if they could provide information about when the cell phone was bought. The detective also asked if they could get a hold of the video footage of the person who made the purchase. After spending hours reviewing the footage, the manager found the relevant sections that matched the time frame of the purchase and sent the footage to the detectives. While watching the video, the detectives could see that the image was poor quality, but they were still able to identify Diana Lovejoy, Greg's estranged wife, in the footage. This discovery made Diana the main suspect in Greg's shooting, and she was promptly arrested during a traffic stop. Despite her arrest, Diana continued to claim she was innocent. The detective asked Diana about her purchases at Best Buy. Although the detective already knew Diana had bought a pay-as-you-go cell phone, which was linked to the number that had led Greg to his shooting, Diana falsely claimed to have bought a router. The detectives then showed Diana a still image from CCTV footage at Best Buy, which depicted the person who bought the phone, and it looked exactly like her. When confronted with this evidence, Diana admitted to buying the cell phone. After this, Diana's story about her involvement in Greg's shooting changed. She told the detectives that she was afraid of Greg, which led her to buy a gun and take shooting classes at Iron Sights, a local range. While practicing, Diana claimed to have met an instructor, Weldon McDavid, an ex-Marine weapons expert who hosted firearm training videos. He helped her learn to shoot. Diana said she had confided in Weldon about her divorce from Greg and their custody battle. As they grew closer, their friendship turned romantic and intimate. Diana told the detective that she and Weldon had come up with a plan to scare Greg, hoping to put an end to his harassment. According to Diana, Weldon had told her to buy a specific phone, which they used to lure Greg to a remote area. Diana claimed that Weldon's role was only to threaten Greg, not to use violence. She admitted to driving Weldon to the site and picking him up later. However, when she heard police sirens approaching, she asked what was going on. That's when Weldon told her that he had to shoot Greg in self-defense, claiming that Greg had made aggressive moves toward him. Diana denied any involvement in the shooting and said she had never asked Greg to take violent action against her. Despite her denials, she was charged with conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. Fortunately, Greg recovered quickly from the gunshot wound to his chest and was released from the hospital soon after. However, the news of Diana's involvement as Greg's estranged wife spread, leaving many people shocked and horrified. Weldon McDavid was arrested and taken to the police station for questioning. The detectives asked him about his connection to Diana and his whereabouts on the night Greg was shot. Weldon claimed he was at home about 30 minutes away from the crime scene on the night of the shooting. When the detectives asked for a DNA sample, Weldon became nervous, realizing they were onto something. The detectives asked if his DNA could be found at the crime scene, and Weldon pretended to be surprised, saying he just remembered something. Weldon told the detectives that the night before the shooting, he went for a run after eating Mexican food, which had upset his stomach, and stopped to use the bathroom on a dirt road. The detectives got a search warrant for Weldon's house, focusing on the garage and hidden areas. They found a suspicious object in the rafters, which turned out to be a rifle with a live round and 6 spent shell casings. These casings matched Jason Cack's account of hearing 6 gunshots. Weldon was then arrested on charges of attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. After searching Weldon's home, the detectives obtained a warrant to search Diana Lovejoy's house. While examining her computer, they found a peculiar search history. Diana had looked up the term "new moon," which caught their attention. The detectives realized that September 1st, the night of the shooting, coincided with a new moon. This was significant because new moons have minimal ambient light. By analyzing her search history, the detectives concluded that Diana had planned the shooting in advance. Her interest in new moons suggested that she intended to use the lack of light to help her husband's murder. The detectives' findings strengthened their belief that Diana played a key role in planning the shooting. During the investigation, detectives uncovered a motive for Diana to kill Greg. The divorce settlements required her to pay him $120,000 for their house. Faced with the possibility of not being able to make the payment on time, Diana might have thought that eliminating Greg would be easier than settling the debt. The trial of Diana Lovejoy and Weldon McDavid began in October 2017. Weldon testified that he never intended to shoot Greg, claiming his sole intention was to scare him. However, he alleged that things took a turn when he heard either Greg or Jason yell, "I got a gun." Weldon maintained that as a skilled marksman, he would have killed Greg if that was his intention. The prosecution presented an alternative theory. Weldon failed to kill Greg because Greg shone a flashlight in his eyes, disorienting him due to the darkness. The lack of moonlight, thanks to a new moon, had left Weldon sitting in the dark for a long time, affecting his sense of orientation. This ultimately saved Greg's life. The jury found Diana Lovejoy and Weldon McDavid guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. When she heard the verdict, Diana collapsed, although the state suspects she faked it. Weldon received a sentence of 50 years to life, while Diana was sentenced to 26 years to life. Both defendants maintain their innocence. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Dave Kupa. If Dave Kupa had known how his online dating would turn out, he would never have registered on a dating site. He would have continued to live his old life with his girlfriend Amy Flora and their 2 children together. Maybe finally, he would have legalized the 12-year relationship after all, especially since after the breakup, Amy and Dave remained good friends. Periodically, they spent vacations together with their children, fulfilling their parenting duties to perfection. That was in 2011, and by the summer of 2012, Dave was ready to start a new relationship. He wanted to get acquainted with women who would not mind a free relationship and did not make far-reaching plans. With such thoughts, he came to the dating site, a place where everyone is looking for something different. About Carrie Farver, she was born on November 30th, 1974, in Macedonia, Nebraska, USA. Having a failed experience of previous relationships, she alone raised her son Max Maxwell. At one time, the child was a reward as well as a challenge for her. Despite her great love for the baby, she once spent a month in bed going into a deep depression. The child's care was provided by Carrie's mother, Nancy Rainey. Difficult relations with the father of the child, unsettled living conditions, served as a reason for the appearance of a young 20-year-old woman. Such an acute psychological state, doctors later diagnosed Farver with bipolar disorder. Individuals with this diagnosis often exhibit contrasting behaviors. Their mood fluctuates between manic states, characterized by euphoria, heightened productivity, and excessive sociability, and depressive states marked by despondency, resentment, and diminished function. This condition significantly disrupts their normal daily life. However, in the early 2000s, Carrie's physician was able to provide an effective treatment, allowing her to live a more typical lifestyle. Whether she wanted to settle her personal life is a rhetorical question. On the one hand, absolutely, what woman does not dream of a worthy companion? On the other hand, why tie yourself to someone who may later become the cause of many worries and misfortunes? Carrie grew up in a loving and full family. She had an active lifestyle, engaged in sports, and dreamed of pursuing a career in medicine. However, these dreams were not meant to be. During her first practical session at the medical college, she fainted at the sight of blood. Consequently, she decided not to risk her own health nor the health of potential patients. Instead, she studied to become a programmer. In the fall of 2012, in the neighboring city of Omaha, Carrie was offered a job on good terms. She couldn't turn down the prospects that lay ahead of her, so she accepted the offer. Since Max was in middle school, the boy did not want to change his familiar surroundings and move with his mother. He remained to reside with his grandmother in Macedonia. Carrie Farver's friend Amy Long recalled that she couldn't help but be noticed when she walked into a room. All eyes were on her and her radiant smile. Perhaps that's what Dave Kupa liked about her. One November day in 2012, Kari met Dave at the auto repair shop where he worked. While looking at Kari's car, a Ford Explorer, he realized he was very attracted to this woman. "She's showing me something inside the car, and we were standing there, and there was some tension," Dave later recalled. It didn't take long for the date to arrive, and it was afterward that they went up to Dave's house. Except that their privacy was marred by many calls and messages from a certain Liz, who later stopped by the man's apartment to pick up something left for her earlier. Dave explained to Kari that this was his former companion, Liz Gore, whom he met on a dating site about 6 months ago and had been dating for a while. He also mentioned that the woman was overly attached, which led to their separation. Kari was very understanding, so she was not bewildered when she saw another woman in the man's residence. After all, everyone has their own emotional baggage from the past that occasionally resurfaces, so Kari remained unperturbed. However, Liz was evidently distressed to see an unfamiliar woman in Dave's home just 2 weeks after moving in. Kari began dating Dave, and they had discussed their relationship with each other beforehand, agreeing only to a brief, unencumbered affair. Elizabeth Guler, better known as Liz, was the first person Dave met online in 2012. Liz was born in 1975 in Michigan. Dave initially liked her, but she claimed that she was also not looking for a serious relationship, especially since she was a mother and most of her time should be spent on her children, not men. They both had children around the same age. Dave repeatedly noted that Liz was unlikely to be a real-life partner for him since she was neither well-read nor educated, which was important in a relationship between a man and a woman. They had few topics of conversation, and the relationship emphasized more on the horizontal over time. Liz became curious about Dave's activities and social interactions while she was away. Dave repeatedly emphasized that they were in an open relationship and she should not worry about his actions. Dave also told Liz that she was free to date other men, as he did not restrict her. However, Liz was not satisfied with this and continued to pester Dave. Liz's main source of jealousy was Dave's children and their mother, Amy. She struggled to understand the cordial relationship that remained between them after their breakup. Eventually, Liz's actions forced Dave to distance himself. Then Kari appeared on the horizon. Kari was beautiful with style and intelligence, and Dave could talk to her for hours. They matched on everything, and Dave felt like he had hit the jackpot. Liz, sensing the man was distancing himself from her, tried to reassert her presence by being more active. She wrote messages, emails, and called him. However, he wasn't willing to stop seeing Kari or anyone else for her. Soon, Kari and Dave were spending more nights together. Dave allowed this because it was convenient for Kari to get to work, and he enjoyed her company. Kari acted like she was not looking for something serious, but was just enjoying the moment, having fun. In December 2015, Liz was shot. The woman, in all likelihood, guessed who it was. As luck would have it, the wound turned out to be non-fatal. Leaving for work on November 13, 2012, Kari kissed Dave and promised to see him later. That was the last time he would see her. At 9:45 a.m. while at work, Dave was very surprised by the contents of a text message from Kari. She texted him that she wanted to live with him and move in with him permanently. The correspondence was very disconcerting to Dave. He could not understand Kari's sudden change of mood, as they had discussed this point beforehand. They had jointly decided that they would not rush into a relationship, that they were happy as they were now. The message, however, told a different story. Dave gently replied that he was not ready for such a change. Kari's response was unpleasant, containing profanity. He described the message saying, "I didn't know what to think. I was shocked." When he returned to the apartment, he found that all of Kari's belongings she had brought with her were gone. Apparently, that's why he thought the woman had left him. That same day, Kari deleted him from her Facebook friends. However, that was not the end of it, as Dave started receiving text messages and emails from Carey several times a day. They contained curses and threats to ruin his life. There were so many of them, and they were all rude. Carey also didn't show up for work, which was unlike her since she was notable for her punctuality. Strange messages from Carey were sent not only to Dave Kupa, but also to her mother and her 15-year-old son. She wrote that she had found a job in Kansas and planned to take Max, but for now she wanted to be alone as she was worried about her failed romance. In May 2013, Carey published a lengthy post on her Facebook profile. The post read, "I've answered enough questions to prove to everyone that I've had enough. You can either believe that I'm the daughter, mother, sister, and friend you've known your whole life, or you can just leave me alone. I left of my own free will, and I'm sick of everyone giving me a hard time for doing what I had to do. I don't miss it. I just don't want to go home right now. I'm a grown woman, and if I feel like leaving home, I have the right to do so. So when I'm ready to come home, I will. I'm sorry that after hurting everyone, I just up and left." Time passed, but Carey never arrived. The woman's mother realized something was wrong when Carey missed her own birthday, as well as Max's birthday and other family celebrations. The final straw was her father's funeral. After a while, Liz Guler also started receiving messages from Carey. In these messages, Carey insulted and humiliated the woman, and some messages contained a threat to stay away from Dave. To understand this strange behavior from her friend, Liz decided to contact him. He told her that he was in a similar situation. Carey attacked him with messages and emails, accusing her former lover of all wrongdoings, calling him a liar, and promising revenge for all the pain she claimed he had caused her. Sometimes the messages were ominous in nature, telling her what Dave was up to at the moment. The fact that they were in the same position brought Dave and Liz even closer together. He felt even more guilty for the inconvenience he had caused her. Soon, the incessant messages from Carey became more threatening. The text was illogical and full of grammatical errors. Carey's mother insisted that her daughter had never been an angry person and that she had always written letters and other documents correctly. Carey was meticulous about spelling and style. Carey's bipolar disorder may have worsened after a second trigger. She could have experienced even more severe mental abnormalities. There is no other explanation for Carey's actions besides her uncontrolled mental state. The primary indicator of dissociative identity disorder, or split personality, is the presence of distinct self-awareness in each ego. Each of these identities has its own memories, thought processes, behaviors, and even tendencies towards certain actions. Could this explain Carey's strange behavior and even her altered writing style? Everything pointed to the woman's instability. That's why the police didn't consider Carey missing, focusing on stopping the pursuit of Liz and Dave. They tried to track Carey through her cell phone, but it was all in vain. The signals were being blocked. Liz and Dave were still receiving hundreds of texts and emails. Sometimes, even when they were together, their phones would receive nasty messages at the same time. The couple continued to date, but Dave felt uncomfortable around Liz. She became more demanding, although she continued to claim that she was fine with their no-commitment relationship. Every time Dave had a fight with Liz and ended his relationship with her, Carey increasingly texted, "We were both victimized. Dave and I had something in common that we didn't have with anyone else," says Liz. Common problems brought the young people closer together, and they returned to each other again and again. In January 2013, Dave discovered the missing Carey's car in his front yard. Surprisingly, the fingerprints on the steering wheel did not belong to Carey, and in general, the car was clean. No suspicious traces were found in it. The police later turned the car over to Carey's parents. Carey continued to write to Liz and Dave. She started sending pictures of their children and threatened to harm them if Dave didn't stop seeing Liz. Time passed, but nothing changed. Carey's obsessive stalking continued, and Liz annoyed Dave more and more with her jealousy as he continued to socialize with other women. He grew tired of the situation and eventually found the strength to end his relationship with Liz. After another tragedy occurred in August 2013, Liz Gore reported a fire in her home that killed all of her pets, including a snake, a cat, and 2 dogs. Liz told police she suspected Kari was responsible for what happened, as the woman had threatened her repeatedly in her texts and emails. The incident marked a turning point in the case of the missing Kari. Kari was put on a federal wanted list, and each of the tens of thousands of messages was decided to be studied in detail. Law enforcement seized cell phones from Dave and Liz, as they believed he was endangered too, so he bought a gun for protection. There was a reason for that, as someone vandalized the auto repair shop where he worked and threw a brick through his window. Kari seemed to direct her anger at anyone in Dave's life. After a while, the mother of his children, Amy Flora, also began receiving threatening messages from Kari. Since the man often spent time with his children, he often saw Amy as well. Police became suspicious, as it didn't make any sense why a woman who had dated Dave for less than 2 weeks for 3 years now would stalk him and his ex-girlfriends. Kari's relatives were also relentless in searching for the missing woman, plugging in every way they could to find her. And one day in the spring of 2015, the efforts paid off. Detectives Ryan Avis and Jim Doty volunteered to solve Kari's disappearance, and they found no evidence that Kari was alive. As one of them told ABC News, "It's not normal for adults to just pick up and leave without literally spending any money, and no one saw her and no one heard her voice. It just doesn't make sense, as she had a good income and a nice house." With the help of Anthony Kawa, the digital forensics administrator for the Palm County Sheriff's Office, detectives reviewed content downloaded from Krupp and Gore's phones in 2013. Kawa stated that Kari sent more than 50,000 text messages and 15,000 emails to Dave over a 3-year period. Kawa further added that the person impersonating Kari became increasingly sophisticated in their methods, attempting to conceal their IP address and true identity. It was clear that the perpetrator had significant technological expertise and access to computer programs. In December 2015, Liz Gore contacted the police again, reporting that she had been shot in the leg on the doorstep of her own home. According to her, it was not Kari, but Amy Flora, whom she recognized as her attacker. Dave was also missing a gun that Amy may have had access to. Could this woman be behind Kari's disappearance? There was a lead in the investigation that explained why everyone connected to Dave Krupp was being harassed. It could well be that Amy, having failed to settle her personal life after the breakup with the father of her children, decided to take revenge in this way and eliminate all competitors, especially since the relationship between Dave and Amy has always been not bad, and the joint children brought them closer together, while foreign women clearly prevented them from getting back together. It didn't take long for the police to respond. Amy was questioned, but to everyone's surprise, she had an alibi. She had not been at Liz's house at the time of the shooting, which was confirmed by several people. So no arrest was made. The investigation became increasingly confusing, but at the same time, new details emerged from the specialists who were processing data from Liz's cell phone. Gore's phone contained a wealth of information. Kava discovered fake email addresses with different variations of Kari's name, and investigators also found an app she used to schedule messages to be sent at certain times. This could explain how she and Dave were receiving messages from Kari simultaneously. Kava became suspicious of Liz Guler, and the puzzle came together when Liz's fingerprint were compared to those found on the steering wheel of Kari's car. They were a perfect match. It became obvious who the culprit was. The killer had been around all these years, and there was no telling who else might have been affected by her actions. One thing was clear: the case had to be stopped as soon as possible. The only thing left to do was not to scare Liz away, or, better yet, catch her red-handed. Something had to be done to throw the woman off balance. The detectives decided to make up a story about supposedly believing Liz, with Amy still being the prime suspect. Liz took the bait. She was overjoyed that she would finally be able to get rid of another rival that was interfering with her happiness with Dave. Shortly afterward, Liz Guler handed the police an email that she claimed was from Amy. In that email, Amy admitted to kidnapping Carrie. It also contained details of the crime. The confession stated that Carrie had been stabbed earlier in the stomach or chest area, and then her body had been disposed of. The details from the letter also contained information about Carrie's car and home, which were not made public. The details were chilling because they were graphic. An investigative spokeswoman said Liz provided detectives with the kind of information that only a true criminal could possess. Thus, she inadvertently confessed to the murder of Carrie. It was clear from the letter that the crime had taken place in the car. Therefore, it was decided to examine the victim's car once again. After the specialists removed the seat covers and fabric, a blood stain belonging to the missing Carrie was found. How did Liz manage to poison messages on Carrie's behalf and yet remain above suspicion? Some sources claim that Liz Gore led a double life, dating both Dave and a man named Garrett. The latter lived at an IP address that was identified as the starting point of messages sent from Carrie's name. Through communicating with him, it was revealed that he had been dating Shanana Gore, whom many knew as Liz, for a long time. Out of kindness, the man offered Shanana to move in with his children after the fire. However, the relationship between the two was complicated and deteriorated markedly after they began living together. Garrett would look after Gore's children while she secluded herself in her room or went somewhere else. It came as a big revelation to the man what the police told him. Gore spent 40 to 50 hours a week pretending to be the missing woman. Her room was a mess, but no significant evidence was found. However, investigators did find several cell phones and electronics in the last apartment she occupied in late December 2016. Shanana Gore was charged with first-degree murder. The county prosecutors spoke about the complexity of the court investigation. Most murders are dark, but this crime was bizarre to the point where it would take some convincing to make someone believe it actually happened. Shanana Gore's attorney, James Martin Davis, hoped the case would fall apart because it relied mostly on circumstantial evidence. Carrie's body was never found, nor was the crime weapon, and Gore herself never confessed. There was no evidence that Carrie had died at all. The defense team opted for a mistrial, meaning that the degree of Shauna's guilt would be determined by a judge, not a jury. Mountains of complex electronic evidence were presented along with physical evidence. However, the prosecution insisted that the amount of blood found on the passenger seat of Carrie's car was consistent with a confession of stabbing from the IP address where Shanana lived. Investigators did establish Shauna's direct link to Carrie's murder by analyzing the memory card she was using around the time Carrie went missing. It was in a tablet that was stored in Dave's possession. Deleted images were recovered, including a photo of a human foot with a Chinese symbol tattooed on it. It was immediately obvious that the foot belonged to a man who had been dead for many years. In addition, among Carrie's special features was a similar tattoo. Later, the woman's mother confirmed that the tattoo really belonged to her daughter. The photo confirmed Shanana Gore's conviction. The judge found her guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He said Carrie did not disappear voluntarily. It is very unfortunate that she was murdered. Authorities believe Shanana killed Carrie, gave her body time to decompose, and then burned the remains to get rid of all evidence. Probably overstepping her bounds due to jealousy, she decided to get rid of her rival. After disposing of her, she purposely took her cell phone to make her look crazy and win back Dave's favor. When her plan succeeded, Shanana wanted to rid her lover of Amy as well. But she got so caught up in the game that she ended up falling into a trap of her own making. It's a bloody love square, to say the least. Gore was also found guilty of setting fire to her own home in August 2013, which she tried so hard to blame on Carrie. The fire not only burned down the house but also killed pets. She received an additional 20 years in prison. The woman is currently incarcerated at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women. Shanana still maintains her innocence. Dave admitted that he has received thousands of emails and text messages signed by Kari over the years. However, he never noticed her stalking him when they were together, which cannot be said for Shanana. He also added, "I want her to leave and not do this to anyone else. Justice has been served." For a long time, Kari's name was on everyone's lips. She was innocently accused of stalking people, as well as burning Shanana's house down. Now, Kari herself has been recognized as a victim, and her good name has been restored. Kari's mother wanted her daughter to be remembered as the fun, smart, talented woman she was. So what became of Kari's son, Maxwell Carey of Macedonia? According to his LinkedIn profile, he followed in his mother's footsteps by becoming a computer programmer. He graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in software engineering and data science and got married. It's unlikely he was able to forget what happened, but he may have found peace in the family he created. Because of his past, Dave Kupa has now chosen to live away from the public eye. In fact, he doesn't even have a public account on any social media platform. The chilling crime story is a brutal reminder of the intricate complexities that can arise in human relationships. Manipulation can sometimes go to extreme lengths just to maintain control of a situation. It is a story about how vulnerable we can be in our familiar surroundings without knowing the true nature of the people around us. In February 2017, at a high-end hotel in Soho, New York, a crisp $100 bill quietly slid across the check-in counter. The desk clerk was astonished by the generous tip from a young lady named Anna. She announced she planned to stay at the hotel for an entire month. At 26 years old, Anna chose a luxurious room adorned with ceramic art pieces and expansive windows showcasing the vibrant New York streets. The cost of this accommodation was $400 per night. Over the following weeks, Anna frequently approached the front desk for additional services for her room, always leaving generous tips. She appeared well-versed in the city's fashionable locales and was familiar with the proprietors of these establishments. She even knew the names of various bartenders and servers. Anna donned high-end designer wear and enjoyed gourmet meals. Despite her apparent affluence and education, Anna's demeanor struck many as unusually discourteous. She never expressed gratitude, was often brusque with the staff, and constantly hurried them along. Regardless of this behavior, she rapidly gained a reputation as a lavish tipper. The hotel staff competed for the opportunity to attend to her room, knowing they'd receive no less than $100 for their efforts. Anna seemed to spend extravagantly, almost eager to part with her money. However, this seemingly affluent and enigmatic persona was far from her true identity. She was actually Anna Vadimovna Sorokina. Born on January 23, 1991 in Domodedovo, a city situated south of Moscow in Russia, her father was a truck driver and her mother ran a modest store. In 2007, at age 16, Anna's family relocated to Germany. Her father began managing a transportation firm, which eventually went insolvent in 2013, 6 years after their move. Subsequently, he ventured into the heating and cooling industry. During this period, Anna's mother dedicated herself to managing their household. Anna attended a Catholic educational institution where her ex-classmates recall her as being reserved and unassuming. She encountered significant difficulties with the German language during her time there. In 2010, Sorokina began her studies at an arts and design college. However, she discontinued her education 3 years later. At the age of 22, she moved to Paris. While in Paris, she interned at a prestigious French publication and adopted a new identity, Anna Delvey. She claimed that Delvey was her mother's maiden name, but this was later revealed to be untrue. In Paris, Anna started attending Fashion Week events and various social gatherings. Her parents provided financial support as best they could. Anna constantly reassured them that investing in her future was a wise decision. In 2016, Anna relocated to New York. She quickly began making appearances at elite social events where she mingled with affluent individuals and gained recognition. Her entry into these exclusive gatherings was facilitated through her close association with Oliver Zahm. the editor-in-chief of the French magazine where Sorokina had interned. At these events, she introduced herself as Anna Delvey, purportedly a wealthy heiress from Germany. Anna claimed she had a fortune of 60 million euros in Swiss bank accounts. The true nature of her father's profession remained uncertain. Some speculated he was a diplomat, others thought he owned an oil company, and a few believed his business involved dealing in antiques. While in New York, Delvey formed a friendship with well-known art collector Michael Souffahon. He shared his ambitions to launch a private art museum with her. When Michael mentioned his plans to attend an art exhibition in Venice, Italy, Del expressed her desire to join him. Michael agreed and covered the expenses for Anna's flight and hotel accommodation under the understanding she would reimburse him later. In Venice, Delvey opted to pay for everything in cash, a choice that struck her wealthy companion as peculiar. Upon their return to New York, Anna didn't show any urgency in settling the debt for the trip. Eventually, the affluent Michael overlooked the unpaid amount of $3,000. In New York, the young woman became friends with Rachel Williams, a former photo editor for a fashion magazine. Rachel characterized Anna as demanding and discourteous towards others. Nevertheless, the two women maintained a close and amicable relationship. Anna began sharing her entrepreneurial vision with her friends. She aspired to purchase a historic building on Park Avenue in Manhattan and transform it into an art venue called the Anna Delvey Foundation. In this building, she envisioned setting up a gallery, retail stores, restaurants, a bar, and a bakery across its 6 floors. Simultaneously, Delvey started employing specialized software to fabricate counterfeit bank statements and other financial documents. These were meant to substantiate her claim of possessing 60 million EUR in Swiss bank accounts. Initially, Delvey secured small loans to sustain her extravagant lifestyle by enlisting the help of various financial advisors. Among them was Joel Cohen, known for his investigative work on the financial machinations of the infamous con artist Jordan Belfort, whose story was depicted in the movie The Wolf of Wall Street. In November 2016, Delvey approached City National Bank to apply for a loan of $22 million. Her rationale? To fund the renovation of a historic building, collaborating with notable designers and restorators. She mentioned that funding was necessary as her personal assets were located outside the United States. Delvey submitted counterfeit documents purporting to show she possessed 60 million euro. However, the bank's loan processing hit a snag. A bank employee sensed irregularities and requested a statement verifying her foreign assets. Subsequently, the banker received the requested document via email, later identified as another fabrication, from a person named Peter Henney. The bank staff found it suspicious that the email originated from a personal account, but Delvey had an explanation ready. "Peter is our family's financial advisor. He mentioned the bank continued scrutinizing documents, but few months later, they denied the loan because she couldn't verify the origins of her Swiss funds." After being turned down by City National Bank, Anna Delvey redirected her attention to Fortress Investment Group to meet her financial needs. The managing director there felt uncertain about Del's loan request, mostly due to inconsistencies in her paperwork. Anna asserted that she was of German descent, yet her passport indicated that Delvey Sorokina was actually born in Russia, which raised suspicion. The director decided to delve deeper into Anna's claimed assets and showed an interest in meeting her Swiss bankers personally. In response, Delvey swiftly withdrew her loan application to avoid further scrutiny and investigation into her affairs. Though she faced hurdles securing loans from 2 major financial institutions, Anna nonetheless managed to secure loans totaling $200,000 from various banks by using forged documents. This significant sum allowed her to sustain a luxurious lifestyle for several months, indulging in the opulence she had been portraying. In January 2017, Anna organized a lavish birthday celebration at a trendy restaurant. Friends and acquaintances remember the event as highly successful. However, a few days after the party, the restaurant staff contacted attendees seeking contact details for Anna Delvey, because she had left without paying the bill for the extravagant affair. Eventually, she resolved this by settling the outstanding amount in cash. On February 18, 2017, Anna checked into the 11 Howard Hotel, where she quickly befriended the administrator, Neff Davis. She initiated this friendship by giving Neff a $100 tip in exchange for information about the most upscale restaurants in Soho. Neff noticed that other hotel guests generally held an unfavorable view of Anna due to her frequent rude and tactless behavior, her habit of not expressing gratitude, and her tendency to wander around the hotel. In a bathrobe, despite this, the hotel staff were eager to cater to Delvey, motivated by her reputation for leaving substantial tips. As time progressed, Anna and Neff developed a closer bond, with Neff taking on the role of Anna's personal assistant. Instead of a conventional salary, Delvey compensated her by inviting her to dine at posh restaurants, treating her to visits to high-end beauticians, and arranging luxurious massage sessions. On one occasion, Delvey brought Neff to an exclusive party where the renowned actor Macaulay Culkin was present. On another, they visited a private trainer, Casey Duke, who eventually became part of their social circle. During her stay at the upscale hotel, Anna Delvey indulged in various luxury experiences. She frequented high-end beauty salons, where she received eyelash extensions from top specialists, each session costing around $400. Additionally, she shopped for items from luxury brands and regularly dined at expensive restaurants. All these lavish expenditures were charged to her account at the 11 Howard Hotel. 3 weeks into Delvey's stay at the hotel, the management realized that the credit card information she had given at check-in was not valid. The hotel owners demanded that Anna promptly settle a bill of $30,000. By then, Delvey had nearly depleted her funds due to her continuous splurging on pricey food and services. Consequently, her social circle had significantly diminished, leaving her to spend time mainly with her 3 closest friends, Neff, Casey, and Rachel. When queried about her financial situation, Delvey remained tight-lipped. On one occasion, Delvey invited Neff to dine at a restaurant after their meal. The payment attempted with Delvey's bank card was declined. She then offered the waiter a series of 12 different credit card numbers, but none were accepted. This left Neff with no choice but to cover that $83 bill using her own savings. However, just a few days later, Delv reimbursed Neff for the expense, paying back triple the amount in cash. This occurred in April 2017. Utilizing falsified documents, Anna Delvey secured a loan of $70,000. She promptly used $30,000 from this sum to settle her outstanding bill at the 11 Howard Hotel. The following month, after submitting a counterfeit bank transfer confirmation from Deutsche Bank, Delvey arranged for a charter flight on a business jet to Omaha, Nebraska. Her intention was to attend an annual investors meeting, hoping to meet the renowned billionaire Warren Buffett. Also in May 2017, Delvey invited a group of her friends, including journalist Rachel Williams, fitness trainer Casey Duke, and a team of videographers for a trip to Morocco. The purpose of this journey was to film a documentary about establishing her philanthropic organization, the Anna Delvey Foundation. For their accommodation, she reserved a luxurious villa in a 5-star hotel complex costing $7,000 per night. The villa featured 3 bedrooms, a private pool, and a dedicated personal assistant. Early into their stay, Casey Duke suffered from food poisoning and had to urgently return to America for medical care. A few days thereafter, the hotel staff informed Delvey they were unable to process payments using her credit card. Anna blamed the staff for incorrectly entering her card information, resulting in the immediate dismissal of one employee for failing to verify the payment data accurately. In this tight spot, Delvey persuaded Rachel Williams to cover the substantial bill of $62,000, an amount equaling Rachel's yearly income. Moreover, Rachel also bore expenses for the flight to Morocco, various purchases made by Anna, and a private excursion to the Majorelle Garden on her credit cards. Despite these considerable charges accruing on Rachel's account, avoid repetition, Delvey assured Rachel that she would reimburse her soon enough. She promised to reimburse these costs later. However, after their return, Anna only paid back $5,000 to Rachel. This left her friend distressed and forced to borrow money from others to afford her apartment rent in New York. By July 2017, grievances about Anna Delvey had begun to surface, notably from designer Mark Creamer, whom she had contracted a year prior for branding services. Creamer was demanding payment for his work, with his fees totaling $17,000. During this period, Anna was frequently moving between hotels, accruing substantial debts and consistently failing to settle her bills. Eventually, she found herself in a dire financial state and reluctantly sought refuge with her friend Casey. At one point, the two women met in a restaurant to discuss Anna's life and financial predicament. Initially, Anna was evasive in her responses, but soon broke down in tears during the conversation. She claimed that her financial woes would be resolved once she succeeded in acquiring the historic building she had been eyeing. It was at this juncture that Rachel Williams realized she was unlikely to recover the remaining sum owed to her by Delvey. Prompted by this revelation, Rachel composed a letter to the local prosecutor's office. Within an hour of sending the letter, law enforcement officials contacted her and revealed they were already conducting a criminal investigation into Anna Sorokin. On October 3, 2017, while undergoing addiction treatment at a rehabilitation center in Los Angeles, Anna Delvey was apprehended and charged with grand larceny and check fraud. By the spring of 2019, the then 28-year-old Anna Delvey faced trial in a case that extended over several months. She was accountable for debts amounting to at least $275,000 owed to various organizations and individuals. The prosecution argued that Delvey's criminal activities spanned a period of 10 months from November 2016 to August 2017. They claimed that Anna Sorokin's mode of operation involved funding lavish lifestyles among her middle-class friends to avoid raising suspicions about her supposed wealth. In contrast, she leaned on wealthier acquaintances who were less vigilant about their expenditures to cover her own expenses. In her defense, Sakina's attorney asserted that his client genuinely believed in her future financial prospects and her ability to eventually repay her debts. He maintained that the milieu surrounding Anna, marked by arrogance and pretense, with individuals frequently glorifying their lives on social media, significantly influenced her to engage in fraudulent activities. Anna displayed an apparent lack of concern regarding her mounting debts and the potential prison sentence she faced. She approached her trial with a unique flair, transforming it into a public spectacle. For each court appearance, she donned attire from the latest designer collections, having enlisted the services of a stylist previously associated with Courtney Love. The stylist's selections were crafted to present Anna in a serious light, while simultaneously garnering sympathy. Throughout the trial, Anna consistently made appearances in high-end designer clothes and expressed dissatisfaction with what she perceived as inadequate media coverage of her case. Despite not viewing herself as a fraudster, Anna Delvey was ultimately convicted. She received a sentence of 4 to 12 years in prison, along with a fine of $24,000. Additionally, she was mandated to compensate the victims with $200,000 in restitution. In a candid interview with journalists, Anna openly admitted that she harbored no regrets about her past actions. She even asserted that given the opportunity to revisit her choices, she would make the same decisions all over again. In 2019, Rachel Williams, one of Anna's acquaintances, published a book titled My Friend Anna. This book delves into Rachel's personal experiences with the swindler and explores the profound impact that their trip to Morocco had on her life. She kept her followers updated about how to communicate with her and provided instructions for sending money via cryptocurrency while in prison. Delvey took meticulous care of her health and appearance, ensuring she slept at least 12 hours daily and dedicated 9 hours each week to yoga practice. She proudly claimed physical changes, noting she had slimmed down and grown a few centimeters taller. Without access to a phone, she immersed herself in books. Anna expressed dissatisfaction with the prison food, particularly missing fresh greens and broccoli. Resourcefully, she made her own nut milk, cultivated greens, and frequently experimented with new organic products available in the prison commissary. After serving 4 years in prison, Anna Delvey was released on February 11, 2021. She quickly reverted to her previous extravagant lifestyle by moving into a lavish hotel, courtesy of funds received from Netflix for the rights to adapt her story. Part of this income was used to settle some of Anna's outstanding debts. However, her freedom was short-lived. Just 6 weeks following her conditional release, on March 25, 2021, Anna Delvey was taken into custody by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement due to an expired visa. The decision to detain her was influenced by the immigration judge's assessment that if released, Delvey would likely revert to fraudulent behaviors. In February 2022, Netflix launched the series Inventing Anna, written by Shonda Rhimes, famous for creating Grey's Anatomy and Scandal. Actress Julia Garner portrayed Anna Delvey in the series. It's reported that Sorokina received $320,000 from Netflix for the rights to her story. Currently, Anna is under house arrest in a New York apartment where she is prohibited from using the internet and rigorously follows this restriction. She regularly contacts her parents by telephone and is permitted meetings on Thursdays. She engages in magazine photo shoots and provides interviews. In January 2023, a photo captured her celebrating her 32nd birthday with flair in her New York dwelling. Sorokina is crafting ambitious plans for the future and aspires to initiate her own reality show, aiming to host notable figures like Madonna and Elon Musk as guests on her program. Today we're heading to San Antonio, Texas, a city near the Mexican border that stands out for its incredible cultural diversity and tradition blending. This border location plays a crucial role, offering a slice of home for Mexicans. The name San Antonio itself, derived from Mexico's national language, Spanish translates to Saint Anthony, which is quite fitting for the city. A highlight of San Antonio is the Trinity University College of Arts and Sciences, particularly the Murchison Tower. Standing at 166 feet, it was once the tallest structure in the city. One day, a young man walked into the university campus. He made his way to a women's dormitory on the second floor, found a specific room, and forcibly entered by breaking the door handle, wreaking havoc inside. With furious anger, he scattered clothes around the room, broke furniture, and tore apart books and notebooks on the desk. His rage was uncontrollable, and by the time security arrived due to the noise, he was sitting on the bed crying, a spilled soda in his hand. The young man was arrested and taken to the police station. The damage inflicted on the room and the university was assessed at $1,650. The individual apprehended was 22-year-old Mark Howerton. Recently, he had lost his beloved girlfriend Kaylee and was struggling to cope with his loss. He went to her room and couldn't manage his emotions. During his arrest, he cried incessantly, repeatedly calling out Kaylee's name. 4 months prior to this incident, Mark Howerton was charged in connection with the demise of his girlfriend and Trinity University cheerleader, Kaylee Mandadi. This story is riddled with rumors, questions, and an abundance of information from law enforcement agencies. But let's take it from the top. Kaylee Anita Mandadi was born on August 26, 1998, in Webster, to Tilak Mandadi and Allison Steele. The family was well off. Allison was a scientist, and Tilak worked as an international executive director at MGM Resorts. After her parents divorced, Allison remarried NASA engineer Lawrence Butlin, who lived in Houston, when Kaylee was 9. Despite her parents' separation, Kaylee maintained a strong relationship with her father, regularly communicating with him. Her stepfather also adored Kaylee and became a second dad to her. Kaylee was not just a grateful and loving daughter and granddaughter, but also an excellent student, team member, sister, and friend whose infectious laughter and kind heart could light up any rooms. In school, Kaylee excelled academically and participated in all extracurricular activities. She enjoyed horseback riding, played the piano, and even performed in theater. Kaylee was a Girl Scout, ran around the Clear Lake neighborhood with her friends, and went on hikes with her parents. In 2016, she graduated with honors from Clear Creek High School in League City, Texas. Kaylee loved animals and joyfully participated in a volunteer group called Animal Therapy. She was always eager to explore new and uncharted territories, dreamed of trying extreme sports, and was constantly in search of thrilling experiences. At 19, the slender, dark-haired Kaylee was already a sophomore at Trinity University in San Antonio, where she was studying communications. She was well-liked with many friends and led the football team's cheerleading squad. Her vibrant and radiant beauty attracted many admirers. One day, during a football game where she was cheering for the Trinity team, she met 22-year-old Mark Howerton. The tall, bright athlete and professional baseball player failed to catch Kaylee's eye at first, since she was smitten with Jet and paid no attention to anyone else. But Mark fell for her at first sight, captivated by her large black eyes and the charisma that set her apart from the rest of the cheer squad. Their first meeting didn't go well, nor did their second. However, Mark persisted, and by September 2017, they officially started dating. From the beginning, their friends and acquaintances deemed them an ill-matched pair, as both were too emotional and quick-tempered. Their relationship lacked compromise, marked from the start by tumultuous arguments and confrontations. The young, passionate couple was constantly jealous and quarreled often. Friends who observed their relationship reported that Kaylee frequently had bruises on her arms and legs. A close friend also shared about an incident that deeply frightened her. Kaylee once asked her to retrieve her mobile phone from Mark because she was too scared to do it herself. The situation escalated to the point where Mark became aggressive, brandishing a gun and threatening violence. Kaylee was aware of her boyfriend's jealousy and temper, but always reassured her friends and asked them not to publicize their loud arguments, since she admitted she wasn't entirely innocent either. However, around 1 a.m. on September 24, 2017, Kaylee's roommates couldn't stand it anymore and called the police. They heard loud noises coming from Kaylee's room and a man yelling and threatening violence. The responding officer found Mark alone in the room. Kaylee declined to press charges, stating nothing had happened and it was just a lover's quarrel. But her friends believed Mark was using controlled substances, leading to uncontrollable outbursts of anger. He once threatened to throw Kaylee off a balcony. Her friends reported this to the police as well. Their relationship was like an ocean. During a storm, the waves were tumultuous, but in calm weather, they were blissfully in love. On October 29th, Mark and Kaylee went to the Malaluna Music Festival in San Antonio. It's one of the largest music festivals focusing on Gothic, modern industrial, and dark wave music, attracting over 10,000 people annually. Malaluna is a hotspot for partygoers and those seeking solitude, as it's easy to blend into the crowd and disappear within its bounds. Mark and Kaylee had a great time partying with their friends throughout the evening. However, the unexpected arrival of Kaylee's ex once again drove Mark to the edge. They had a major argument and left the festival early. That was the last time their friends saw them that night. 6 hours later, deep into the night, Mark's black Mercedes pulled up at a hospital. He rushed out of the car, desperately waving and calling for help. The medical staff found a semi-nude girl in the front seat, unconscious. The car was in disarray, Kaylee's clothes were scattered about, and she sat slumped forward like a lifeless doll. Kaylee was moved onto a stretcher and taken to the emergency room. Mark informed the hospital staff that they had consumed illegal substances prior to attending the festival. This information aided doctors in treating her for a potential overdose. She was then transferred to another medical facility in Kyle, Texas, where a nurse specialized in intimate assault cases examined her and discovered additional bruises on her arms, legs, and ear. A forensic examination determined that blunt force trauma to the face and head was the cause of demise, indicating Kaylee had been the victim of a fatal assault. Consequently, police initiated an investigation to find the individual responsible for Kaylee Mandadi's loss of life. Mark was the primary suspect since he was the last person seen with Kaylee that night. Yet there were no concrete pieces of evidence linking him to the crime. However, Mark cast suspicion on himself. With each subsequent police interview, he altered his account of events, drawing investigators' attention. Surveillance footage captured him and Kaylee in locations Mark had failed to mention. Furthermore, conversations with Kaylee's friends and family members revealed his tendency towards aggressive behavior towards her. One of her sisters even expressed being terrified of him. The police uncovered alleged incidents of violence between the couple, including Mark hitting Kaylee's head against a car window and trashing her dorm room at Trinity. Upon learning about Mark's previous assaults on Kaylee at the university, her parents were devastated. The mother of the slain Trinity University cheerleader, Kaylee Mandadi, filed a lawsuit against the institution, alleging it failed to take necessary steps to protect her daughter from her boyfriend's attacks, who is accused of causing her demise in a fit of jealousy. The lawsuit was filed in the Bexar County District Court on behalf of the mother, Allison Steele. The former boyfriend of her daughter, Mark Howerton, is also named as a defendant. The suit claims that Howerton assaulted the 19-year-old from League City and was ultimately responsible for her fatality. According to the lawsuit, Trinity staff, its administration, and campus police were aware of Mark Howerton's erratic behavior during their relationship. It alleges that the man threatened to break Kaylee Mandadi's face or inflict serious bodily harm. But the university took no action in the weeks leading up to her demise to protect the young woman. A spokesperson for Trinity University declined to comment on the lawsuit's allegations, citing the ongoing legal process. Trinity University's failure to respond to numerous reports of harassment, cruel treatment, intimidation, domestic violence, and gender discrimination led to the tragic end of the sophomore. Allison Steele's statement also mentioned that Kaylee Mandadi's tragedy could have been prevented had Trinity intervened as it should have. The university ignored its own policy on investigating and responding to potential cases of violence and harassment in relationships, as stated in the lawsuit. After an incident in the dorm room, Mark was issued a criminal trespass order, banning him from the campus for a year, yet he repeatedly violated it. Additionally, detectives discovered many stories of Mark's violent behavior towards Kaylee during their relationship. For instance, one of her sisters recounted that he threatened to throw her off a balcony during an argument, while another claimed he also threatened to shoot some of her ex-boyfriend's brothers with his gun. Based on all these statements against him, the police were able to issue a warrant for his arrest, after which he turned himself in. In February 2018, following the discovery of Kaylee's room in disarray at the university, Mark Howerton surrendered to the police. He faced multiple charges, including criminal acts, intimate violence, and abduction. However, he pleaded not guilty to these charges. The first trial regarding Kaylee Mandadi's demise began in December 2019. Prosecutors argued that Mark, known for his volatile temperament, fatally assaulted Kaylee Mandadi in a fit of rage. They also claimed that he transported her for nearly 6 hours before taking her to the hospital. In defense, Mark's legal team contended that Kaylee's end could be attributed to various factors. Autopsy reports revealed the presence of banned substances in her system, suggesting a potential spike in blood pressure or head trauma during intimate activity. Kaylee's mother recounted that the injuries and bruises on her daughter's body were severe, akin to falling from an airplane. Indeed, the injuries were extensive. Photos presented to the jurors of Bexar County showed the Trinity University sophomore from San Antonio, Texas, barely recognizable with bruises from head to toe, red marks and scratches. Both of her eyelids were swollen and bruised. The only areas without any sign of injury were her back and the back of her legs. Graphics and photographs taken by Dr. Susanna Dana, the the forensic pathologist who conducted Kaylee Mandadi's autopsy, showed a subdural hematoma, a collection of blood usually associated with traumatic brain injury on the right side of her brain. Kaylee's father, Tilak Mandadi, after seeing 2 photos where the victim was in the ICU in a vegetative state, surrounded by numerous tubes with her face hardly visible, spoke about his daughter with a trembling voice as tears filled his eyes. "That's my daughter," he said, "my only child." Dr. Susanna Dana stated that upon examining Mandadi's head, she found a dent in her skull. Most of the doctor's testimonies focused on the cranial and facial injuries Mandadi suffered, which Dana described as severe injuries. These injuries included eye trauma. Both eyelids were bruised, with the left eyelid so swollen it couldn't fully close. There were extensive bruises on both the left and right jaws, bruises on the inside of the mouth, above the teeth on the gums, on the lips and cheeks. "There were hemorrhages in both eyes," she said, showing photos of the inner eyelid lining. She concluded that the cause of Mandadi's demise was a blunt object's head and facial trauma. Dr. William Anderson reviewed the autopsy results and disagreed with the conclusions that Kaylee Mandadi had been attacked. "We don't see any fractures in the orbit. No fractures in the nose either. We don't see any fractures on the face. This indicates that there was no frontal assault. Instead, Anderson suggested that the young woman's injuries were more consistent with a fall and extensive medical intervention." Defense attorney John Hunter presented an alternative narrative, stating that the prosecution lacked sufficient evidence to clarify what happened to Kaylee Mandadi that night. Proving Mark Howerton's involvement in the incident was deemed impossible. Throughout the trial, he frequently pointed to Kaylee Mandadi's drug use, at one point referencing her treatment for substance dependence at a hospital. Jason Wallach, a professor at the University of Sciences in Philadelphia, testified that Kaylee Mandadi had a high level of MDMA, commonly known as ecstasy or Molly, in her blood after her boyfriend took her to the hospital on the evening of October 29, 2017. The presence of these substances indicated that a person could sustain a minor head injury, and the effects of MDMA could turn it fatal. John Hunter, building on the above conclusions, suggested that the drug affects each person differently. Many people experience an increase in body temperature or an electrolyte imbalance when taking the substance. According to him, these conditions could lead to a loss of consciousness. The jury began to hear testimonies. That day, jurors saw a video and heard an audio recording from police officers, where Mark Howerton told investigators that he and Kaylee had an argument and engaged in intimate relations in the car before she passed out, and that they enjoyed engaging in rough intimacy. He stated he would strangle her during the act because she liked it. Mark Howerton claimed that everything was consensual. But where did these bruises come from and when? This question remained unresolved during the trial concerning Kaylee's demise in December 2019. Allison firmly believed that Mark Howerton would be held responsible for her daughter's end. However, after the 2019 trial, the family felt deeply disappointed. Although Mark was charged with ending a life, he maintained his innocence. The defense argued that the victim's injuries were inflicted during resuscitation efforts by hospital staff. As a result, the jury could not reach a verdict, leading to a mistrial. The case was heard in the 144th District Court of the state, presided over by Judge Raymond Angelini. When the jury could not reach a verdict, the case was declared a mistrial and dismissed. Thus, in the first trial, Howerton was acquitted of the charges, leaving the case unresolved. Bexar County District Attorney Joe Gonzalez, who had been handling the case from the beginning, expressed his disappointment with the outcome and stated that he would review the case. During this time, Kaylee Mandadi's parents decided to start their investigation. They collected all evidence and autopsy reports from the police and focused on a small, round, pinpoint bruise near Kaylee's ear. Allison and Lawrence speculated that Mark might have hit her head against the car window, causing her to hit the door lock and get bruised. They hoped this would establish his guilt. Identifying a similar Mercedes, the car Mark was driving that night, Lawrence took photos, posing in a manner they believed reflected the circumstances under which Kaylee might have injured her head. With the assistance of Texas Rangers, they obtained records, 3 written affidavits under oath, in the warrant for Howerton's arrest on charges of criminal acts, aggravated intimate assault, and criminal mischief, addressing many questions about Mandadi's case and providing a detailed timeline of events before and after her demise. The slideshow listed key moments in chronological order leading to Kaylee's death and the evidence found during the investigation. Specifically, the timeline provided by authorities sheds light on Mark Howerton's alleged falsehoods to the Rangers and the evidence that led to his arrest. Throughout the trial, prosecutors portrayed Howerton as a manipulative and controlling boyfriend who constantly called Kaylee and took her phone away so she couldn't talk to friends. At one point, 2 weeks before her demise, Howerton pushed Mandadi against a brick wall and in a fit of rage trashed her dorm room. Soon after, Kaylee told Mark that she needed space, according to texts reviewed by the jury. Howerton began sending her dozens of messages, at one point threatening to end his life. She pleaded with him not to do so. In total, he called her about 200 times that evening. Then, they attended a festival and argued over Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, who was also there. Mark Howerton took Kaylee Mandadi from the festival, placed her in the car, and drove to a deserted parking lot near the Whataburger headquarters, close to US 281 in Sunset Road. GPS camera records show that the couple was in the parking lot for over an hour. Prosecutors suggested that it was there Mark Howerton attacked Kaylee Mandadi and beat her to death. Kaylee Mandadi's family thanked the Texas Rangers for their diligent work in bringing the appropriate criminal charges against Kaylee's alleged assailant. The retrial for Mark Howerton commenced in June 2023 after delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic. At the trial, the prosecution considered presenting a video recorded by Kaylee Mandadi's parents, capturing her injuries in the hospital, but ultimately withdrew it due to potential complications and new disputes. Evidence collected with the help of Texas Rangers was also taken into account. Mark Howerton was found guilty of aggravated assault causing bodily harm, leading to legal case. The court sentenced him to 20 years in prison, with a $10,000 fine and restitution to Kaylee Mandadi's family. Additionally, he was barred from contacting over 20 individuals involved in the case. Mark, now over 30 years old, is serving his sentence in the Willacy County Jail, eligible for parole in 2033. The conviction brought some closure to Kaylee's family, though they stated the sentence seemed insufficient for their loss. In the second trial, Mark Howerton faced charges including aggravated assault, causing serious bodily harm, in addition to the initial charge of manslaughter from the first trial. Unlike the first trial, the prosecution expanded the charges to include aggravated assault and criminally negligent homicide. The legal strategy was adjusted to present a more comprehensive case against Mark Howerton. However, dissatisfied with the outcome, Kaylee's family and prosecutors insisted on a retrial. Kaylee Mandadi's tragic story highlighted the devastating impact of violence on a young life and her grieving family's quest for justice. This complex case is the focus of the article, The Final Hours of Kaylee Mandadi, reported by 48 Hours correspondent Peter Van Sant. Kaylee Mandadi's story serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of violence against young people with promising futures. Despite the conviction, Kaylee's family stated that the verdict does not serve justice for their beloved daughter. In 2019, Allison Steele, Kaylee Mandadi's mother, successfully lobbied the Texas legislature to expand the missing persons alert system in Texas. She then founded the nonprofit organization Kaylee's Calling, aiming to consolidate missing persons alert systems. Steele also established a nonprofit dedicated to providing public information about the Clear Alert, an emergency broadcasting alert in Texas for individuals aged 18 to 64. In addition to these efforts, in 2021, she filed a civil lawsuit against Trinity University, alleging negligence in protecting her daughter, Steele claimed that none of Kaylee's guardians were informed that Mark Howerton had trashed her dorm room. She also stated that the university took no action against him, allegedly giving him continuous access to her daughter and making her vulnerable to manipulation. It remains unclear whether the evidence collected by Allison and Lawrence was presented at Mark Howerton's trial in 2023. Despite being acquitted of the charge of ending a life, he was found guilty of aggravated assault causing bodily harm. Prosecutors noted that the family expressed satisfaction with the verdict, as they had endured prolonged suffering and felt relief that the legal proceedings had concluded, allowing them to begin the healing process. Losing a child is an agonizing ordeal, and sadly, it was a heart-wrenching journey that Kaylee Mandadi's parents had to endure. Allison Steele said they are still completely devastated by the loss of Kaylee and asked those of faith to pray for her family, friends, and for justice in this matter.